and welcome to this virtual session. We're glad you can join us today. Before we get started, there's a few housekeeping items we'd like to go over with you now. Firstly, you can resize the webinar windows to cater to your viewing preferences. You can maximise, minimise and drag the windows to your preferred viewing size. If you look at the bottom middle of your screen, you can click on the widgets that you'll need to get the most out of this virtual experience. Secondly, Microsoft specialists are on hand to answer your questions in real time. So feel free to type in your questions using the Q&A window and we'll answer them as soon as we can. Lastly, we've provided some additional resources for you to supplement your learning. You can access them by clicking on the links in this section. Without further ado, I'll hand over to our speakers.
So welcome to the Microsoft 365 Virtual Training Day, Enable Remote Work with Microsoft Teams. During this session, we'll start with an overview of Microsoft Teams in Microsoft 365 and then move into the implementation of Microsoft Teams governance, security, and compliance. We'll wrap up part number 1 with the understanding on how to prepare for the environment for that Microsoft Teams deployment. So before I actually start covering the content, I would like to introduce myself. So my name is Christian Vergara. I will be your instructor for the next 2 days. And in terms of my experience, I currently work as a Microsoft certified trainer for Microsoft, so I have the opportunity to definitely provide training around Azure and technologies like Microsoft 365. So let's get started with module number 1. So before we start covering the content of this module number 1, let's take a quick review of why actually enable remote work is crucial nowadays, why it's important, and how we can use something like Microsoft Teams with that approach. So we talk about enable remote working. Organizations worldwide nowadays definitely need to still be productive and definitely safety comes first. So what's that? A lot of organizations have to definitely shift to that remote working scenario. So we definitely understand and recognize the importance of technology. Definitely is crucial at this moment to enable people to be effective and still collaborate as we're working from home. So all different employees have different needs, but all still need to be productive. In some cases, maybe some people that still need to go to the office, but most of the employees still need to be productive from home. But all of us, from C executives all the way up to frontline workers, all of us definitely still need to be productive. So just to take a look on kind of those 3 key profiles that we identified that in this case can benefit from something like Microsoft Teams. Could be information workers. So information workers on a daily basis, they need to definitely collaborate with files and access dashboards, but it still can be productive as they're working from home. We could have also first-line workers. First-line workers definitely have a lot of mobile devices popular nowadays. So by the touch of the hand, they still have kind of those applications that are key for the business, but they should still be able to collaborate and be productive with the other coworkers. And the last one, also crucial nowadays, people that work in the healthcare and school domain or also government. So there are some cases they don't have the chance, still need to go to the office, but they still need to be effective and collaborate. For example, health workers nowadays conducting definitely a lot of virtual visits with patients. Could be also teachers that need to also conduct classes with the students in a virtual way. So let's take a look at that agenda of this module number 1, overview of Microsoft Teams. So definitely we like at a glance, we try to definitely identify all these features, capabilities that we have available in Microsoft Teams. So here we'll see capabilities also in terms of integration with other tools that are part of the Microsoft 365 suite. I'm going to take the time to review one of those capabilities in more detail, like integration with things like Power Platform, also review the architecture of Microsoft Teams. After that, we take a review also of the different roles available for administration purposes. After that, talk about the different management tools, do a quick review also of licensing, and after that, we'll expand about things like rollout plan and adoption plan to introduce something like Microsoft Teams in your organization. Keep in mind that all those different topics also will be expanded in more detail in the upcoming modules. So let's get started with that overview of Microsoft Teams. So collaboration definitely has evolved over the years. At the beginning, maybe you remember, it was kind of like a big thing when we were able, for example, to send a message over an email. In this case, we can collaborate, but after that, having issues, for example, to share large files. So definitely, in some cases, not effective. And actually, we tried some cases to actually limit the size of those files that we can send on an email. After that, definitely, you can sample, evolve it, and we can have something like a portal. And on that side, you can just easily upload, download files, and definitely help you to collaborate. And in that case, instead of actually attaching those files into the email message, you can just upload those files into a different site. But still, we can struggle. In this case, even if I'm not adding the file itself, maybe just a link to that site where people can download that file, still definitely introduce some issues in terms of collaboration, because I will need to switch between different tools. So I will need to go first to that email. After that, I will need to go to that site to upload and download the file, and can definitely impact productivity. So with Microsoft Teams, we definitely try to just simplify the process and help you to be more productive. So from a single place, you can do all those different tasks that we understand you definitely need to do on a daily basis. So things like definitely manage and share files, also chat and call with colleagues, manage projects and work groups. Also could be that you are the host of a meeting. Also need at some point of time, maybe just not to edit yourself the document, but also to collaborate with other colleagues and work at the same time on the document. Could be also important that, for example, to manage contacts. And the last one, also to integrate with other business applications. So from a single place, you can do all those different tasks instead of switching between applications. So let's talk about the different integration capabilities that we have available in Microsoft Teams. So keep in mind that Microsoft 365 applications and services definitely can be easily integrated with Microsoft 365. And we also take a look at what's under the hood in Microsoft Teams. And we'll see actually though using a lot of those tools, but we'll take a look to definitely to highlight all of those key features that you can easily leverage from Microsoft Teams to collaborate. Again, the whole idea here is that you don't need to switch between different applications to be productive and collaborate effectively. So we have definitely capabilities of integration with all those different applications that are part of the Microsoft 365 suite. And definitely take a look to talk about all those different key features. So let's start with Microsoft Outlook. So with Microsoft Outlook, what you can do, definitely you have an interesting feature. For example, what happens if you would like to take this offline in an email message, maybe a conversation that you were having inside Teams. Yes, you have that option, share to Outlook, so that you can take that conversation from Teams and make it an email available in Outlook. Could be also the opposite. What happens if I, for example, replying to an email and I would like that email also to appear inside a Teams channel, you also have an option, share to Teams, directly from that Microsoft Outlook client. And on the other hand, you have also that interesting notifications, for example, that are sent to Microsoft Outlook in case you miss any messages. In some cases, you can be easily overflooded with a lot of messages, but none of these, some cases, are relevant just to you. But in this case, if you miss messages that were directly sent to you, or messages that someone tagged you, definitely there's an expected action from your end. You will get a notification inside the message in Microsoft Outlook, and you can just take it from there instead of go and switch to a different application. So you can just reply, and that will take care of sending that message inside a Microsoft Teams conversation. Next in the list, we have SharePoint. So SharePoint also we have some interesting capabilities in terms of integration. For example, if you have a site that was built on top of SharePoint, you can just also just add that site or that list directly as a tab into Microsoft Teams. Same thing, now actually be called, maybe if you have the opportunity to work before with Yammer, now it's actually called communities. So you're working also with a lot with those communities can be also just easily pinned as part of the same Microsoft Teams interface. So we have all these different capabilities that we can easily just integrate. Remember, always important, we don't need to switch between applications. from a single place, I can get access to all those different capabilities. Next one on the list, we have also integration with Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft Forms is a popular platform that lets you create kind of service, and that way people can interact. For example, you have a question, you would like to have the feedback from your colleagues or your team. You can just easily create those surveys in Microsoft Forms. And interesting that actually you can easily integrate those surveys directly into that channel in Microsoft Teams. As you see here, you can easily create and edit those surveys. You can also reply or fill out those surveys. And also you can take a look on the results of the surveys directly from that Microsoft Teams interface. We also have capabilities of integration with other definitely Microsoft tools like Tasks. So Tasks definitely is an interesting tool that lets you assign and plan all those different to-do lists. So you can also create and edit those lists fully directly from that Microsoft Teams interface. So you can edit the task and you can also assign those tasks. So definitely a lot of organizations in real life and actually using something like Planner to assign and collaborate in a team, so you can have that visibility, that traceability, and see actually how those tasks are evolving, how the team is making progress on all those different assignments. So both of those tools can be easily integrated into that single interface in Microsoft Teams. And to expand in capabilities, we have something that is known PowerFlow. So PowerFlow is basically a tool where you can create workflows. You can easily integrate as part of those definition of the workflows with any of those tools inside the Microsoft 365 tool, including definitely Microsoft Teams. And keep in mind actually that Microsoft Teams also has connectors or extensions. In this case, I can also integrate easily with third-party tools. So actually, you're not limited to just that Microsoft 365 suite. Actually, you can easily integrate things like Twilio and other extensions that are available. Those also can be part of the definition of that workflow inside Power Platform. So actually, we'll take the time to explain all those capabilities available in Power Platform. So let's take a look at those capabilities in more detail. So the first one in Power Platform, it definitely is like a suite of different tools that you can leverage. We have something that is called Power Automate. So Power Automate is where you can definitely build that definition of the workflow on a graphical interface and automate several tasks. Keep in mind, for example, you grabbing those connectors, for example, can automate an action. Could be something like send an email over Outlook. Could be something also like update an item or grab some information from Dynamics 365, and many other things that we have in terms of capabilities to the definition of that Power Automate workflow. Second, we have also an option that is called Power Apps. We talk also about that in more detail. At the end, keep in mind that all those workflows and also all those Power Apps can be easily just visualized inside a Power BI dashboards. So the first one, Power Automate, is basically that definition in a graphical interface like the one you see on the slides here. So basically just the definition of the setup steps. So the first step definitely will be when I need to execute that workflow. So it could be based on a schedule, could be also based on an action. Actually, the example we have here in the slide, let's say every time there's a new item added into a SharePoint list, what I will do, I will get the item. Next step will be to get the profile. After that will be to automate in this case and get an approval. And after that, there are multiple elements. Make sure that all those elements are addressed. And after that, if they still need to wait to get an approval, and after that, I can also build condition in that logical that easily you can see no requirements in this case to go and build an application or build that logic using code. So directly from a graphical interface, you can just easily define that workflow. And on those workflows, in this case, we have tasks coming from SharePoint, Office, but can be easily all those different connectors that we have available inside and outside the Microsoft 365 suite, as you definitely building that definition. And also something interesting that we have available in Teams, we have also a bot. In some cases, actually, if you need to, for example, have some input from end users, definitely can interact with a bot, and that bot in this case can grab those answers coming from end users, and continue processing the workflow for you behind the scenes. Next part of the suite of that Power Platform is something that is known as Power Apps. So Power Apps let you to easily build and create applications without no code. So therefore you need to create an application and build it from scratch. So easily you can just start building the application inside a graphical interface and just, for example, something like, let's say if this is an application that I need, for example, to make sure that store is supplied appropriately. So therefore I can build an application for that. Could be also an application, for example, to submit customer orders. So without needing to actually create an application using code, I can just easily create that Power application. And after that, people can just also pin or add those Power applications directly into the Microsoft Teams interface as well. So super easy to use and integrate directly inside Microsoft Teams, and definitely very powerful in terms of the capabilities that we can add with something like this inside Microsoft Teams. Remember all those different records that can be created, and also that traceability that we have available can be coming from those Power Platform tools. And in this case, to visualize the results, I can use something like Power BI, so that I can just get that information easily represented into a dashboard. Yeah, definitely possible to do something like that. And I can also add those Power BI dashboards as well directly into the tabs that we have available in a channel in Microsoft Teams. Definitely you don't need to switch between applications, go to that Power BI dashboard site. No, you can just easily get access to that dashboard directly within the same interface. So that's kind of the integration capabilities that we have available in Microsoft Teams. So now let's talk about the architecture of Microsoft Teams. What's under the hood? So actually, behind the scenes, for example, capabilities like chat. So if this is a one-on-one chat, or this is a one-to-many chat that is taking place inside a channel in Microsoft Teams, basically behind the scenes, this interacts with Exchange Online, and basically with all the different users that are on that same channel, it will just send those messages behind the scenes using Exchange Online. Also for the files that are stored inside those channels and for those wikis, all those files are actually stored inside a SharePoint site. When it comes to meetings and calls, we use definitely several components, but behind the scenes definitely will be using the calling meeting services that we have available on the cloud. And in this case, as with, for example, scheduling those meetings, definitely you will notice those are available on your calendar. So basically this will create the appointments inside your mailbox on Exchange Online. And the last piece, if this is just one-on-one files that takes place in this case, let's say I'm chatting with a person outside the channel, you can just, for example, also share files directly with that person. And also when one or many persons outside a channel in Microsoft Teams, and in this case, those files are directly stored inside your OneDrive for Business account. So that's where actually those files are stored. That's actually how we operate behind the scenes. We use definitely those services like SharePoint, services like Exchange Online, services like Skype that basically back up all those different capabilities. From a single place, I can do all those different tasks instead of switching between different applications. So all of those capabilities from a single place. So in terms of administration, we have several roles available in Microsoft Teams built in out of the box. So just to highlight the more important ones here, we have roles like, first of all, if you're familiar, have worked with Microsoft 365, keep in mind, there's a global administrator role. Keep in mind that global administrator basically will inherit also permissions inside Microsoft Teams as well. So basically that global administrator can do anything inside that Microsoft 365 10. In this case, we have dedicated rules just for the management task in Teams. So we have a Teams Service Administrator. So that Teams Service Administrator helps in this case to manage all the different settings of the service and also can create and manage groups inside Office 365. So that's what we had available with this role. Second role is Teams Communication Administrator. So this role is able in this case to manage all the different calling and meeting capabilities and features that we have on the Microsoft Teams service. So just that portion, all the other things in this case, I'm not able to create or manage Office 365 groups or all the different settings about, for example, let's say policies, naming conventions, or compliance things. No, all those things are limits in this case with those roles. We have also a couple of roles dedicated for support. We have a Teams Communication Support Engineer. So that roles let you to use advanced tools for troubleshooting. And also we have that support specialist. That support specialist can use only basic tools for troubleshooting scenarios. So this is just a handful of all the different roles that we have available. Keep in mind that, for example, to add some of your team members to all those different roles, you can use any of the tools available to manage teams. So you can use, and they will span all those different tools during the next modules. You could use, for example, a graphical interface using the Teams admin portal. You can also use the command line, things like PowerShell as well, to manage and assign all those different roles. And you can also even use something like Azure Active Directory as well, and from there also assign people to all those different roles. On the next actually demo that's coming, I will show you how to do it using the graphical interface and also how you can also work on the command line. So definitely that's coming. I will show you on the demo at the end of this module. So let's talk briefly about licensing. So when it comes to licensing in Teams, definitely can be a little bit confusing. So definitely what I will suggest, if you have definitely particular or specific needs, definitely talk back to your Microsoft representative or talk maybe to your account team representative. Definitely should be able to understand your scenario and definitely provide you with more detailed guidance about that. So for now, keep in mind that Teams is available across multiple licensing mechanisms. So we have free and trial licenses available. We also have licenses available as bundles from Microsoft 365, depending on the suite that you selected. And we also have dedicated add-ons, for example, when it comes to things like audio and configuration capabilities. And also, for example, if you're looking to leverage additional capabilities like, for example, multi-factor authentication, that you would like to use, for example, a hardware-based token, or you would like to use things like conditional access. In this case, definitely those kind of capabilities will require like an Enterprise Management Suite E5 license or something like that. So definitely depending on the capabilities you're looking for, just definitely take a look that you have that license that will help you to definitely achieve those results. And also important that just to highlight that Microsoft 365 Education, Business, Enterprise, and Developer Subscription Plus, all of them have those core capabilities that allow you in this case easily, for example, just to collaborate and chat with your colleagues using Microsoft Teams. So all these capabilities are included into that base license. So let's talk briefly about that rollout plan with Microsoft Teams. So as you will see, as you maybe have the opportunity to work already with Microsoft Teams, super easy to use, not complex. But actually, when we're talking about that rollout plan, we need to carefully plan that deployment. So usually, it's kind of like a best practice, follow those first steps. First one, definitely create themes and channels. As you get started, maybe just create a couple of those. So definitely people be able to familiarize and maybe provide it with feedback how you actually should organize those teams and those channels. Second step definitely will be to onboard early adopters. So just a handful of users in this case will be accessing that environment and testing those features. After that will be definitely crucial to capture the feedback coming from those users and also monitor usage, how they're using interactive and understand all these different patterns, how they're using the toolset. Last step will be to get the resources definitely to plan that organization and definitely expand those capabilities to all the organization. So definitely this is not likely to happen overnight. Definitely is careful that needs to be planned carefully, and you need to definitely stay on control all over the process. In some cases, you can just, for example, and having a lot of questions about security, governance, how it works. So in this case, is actually one of the first things that you also need to work on. And actually that's coming on that module number 2. Usually first need to work on that governance strategy, And after that, it will be just easily to follow those strategies or guidelines using all the different settings available in Microsoft Teams. And after that, once you definitely just have this feedback, people start to work, then actually plan to start rolling out also the features. It's also not a good idea from the beginning, just roll out all the different features. No, definitely start carefully about that. And after that, just definitely apply to expand all those different features. So it could be things like telephony. If you have an existing Skype for Business installation, okay, how I can transition or migrate to Teams. And in this case, keep in mind you have different resources available for you. So things like Microsoft Fast Track can definitely also help you in this deployment and transition process. So for that adoption plan, super important. That first step definitely will be to plan for that adoption, identify all those members as part of that initial team that definitely will provide you that crucial feedback. After that, we'll create that initial set of teams and channels. As you create in those first teams, definitely assess how the organization is ready or not. And after that, definitely just proceed with that step number 2. Definitely bring those champions, bring those power users, in this case, that will be able to help you test the environment and provide that valuable feedback. So definitely super important. One of the things that you first double check is that governance strategy. So definitely a couple of things that you need to evaluate, like who should be able to create channels, who should be able to create new teams, and all those different settings that you have available. You can definitely limit all those actions with built-in capabilities in Microsoft Teams, but those strategies actually should come from you. After that, how we'll gather and capture all this feedback. After that, selecting those early adopter users. After that, defining all those user scenarios in Microsoft Teams. And after that, super important also, you need to train your support team. So they should be able, in this case, also to also handle those requests that maybe you will be having when people start working with Microsoft Teams. After that, third step is definitely build that service strategy, stakeholders, people that need to involve. So as you identified previously, all those different use cases or usage scenarios of Microsoft Teams, definitely involve stakeholders for each one of those different scenarios, identify all those KPIs in terms of what you're expecting, what will be the outcomes, and how you will measure if this is successful or not. After that, super important also to work in awareness campaigns. You definitely need to socialize the tool, welcome people to use the tool, and also provide all the required training so they can be able definitely to be productive using those tools. After that, super important to take a look on those reporting tools available. So you definitely should be able to identify if people actually are using those tools or not, understand also end users' behaviors. If they are not yet using the tools, identify maybe what's that blocker and definitely try to overcome that blocker. So definitely people start working and collaborate effectively using something like Microsoft Teams. After that, super important also have that buy-in or engagement coming from the business. So definitely last step will be ongoing improvements. So this is not just a single cycle and once we completed that step 3 is done. No, keep in mind, we always keep an eye on those metrics and we should be able to identify all those different ways in this case to be more productive or improve based on the findings on that previous iteration. So we have also several resources available for you to guide you all over the process. So we have prescriptive guides available to definitely all those different stages. One of those interesting resources is also coming on the next slide. So for now, just take a look on all the different URLs we have available at the bottom. So definitely have more interesting information available directly there, and that ak.ms Team Success Kit, and also that ak.ms Microsoft Adoption. So one of those resources that definitely will help you, you don't need to start from scratch and build that adoption plan yourself. So we have already that prescriptive guidance that will help you to accomplish that goal. And we have that Teams Adoption Hub is available at that link ak.ms Teams Adoption. So from there you have that definitely where you should start. So all those stages that described on the previous slide, you have detailed guidance for each one of those different phases in detail. Even for example, to socialize that Teams deployment, you also have templates in there. Can definitely get users engaged and start using Teams and be productive with that. So that's last piece of content of this module number 1. So we have a demo coming. So let me switch to that demo. On that demo, what I show you, all the different tools that I have available to manage that Microsoft Teams environments. So definitely kind of the first things that you will need to make sure are correctly configured on your end. So for example, prepare the teams and the licenses. So keep in mind you have all those different roles I described. So you should be able to administer those settings. You should be able in this case to have those support capabilities in case of troubleshooting. So definitely just assign those building roles. Make sure also people that has the required license to start working with Teams. After that, also going to explore how you can actually work and administer that Microsoft Teams organization using the command line. So we have a PowerShell module for that. I will show you that in the demo. And the last piece will be just going directly into the Teams interface and create a couple of groups and teams. So let's go with that demo. In this case, I have a pre-configured VM, have all I need in there, basically have an installation of Teams. So let's transition there. So just inside my demo VM, and here I will first use the graphical interface. So just open that Edge browser, and from here I will take it to that portal.office.com. So when you're ready, familiar with that site where you can get access to all those Office 365 applications, and you can also get access to that admin site as well. In case you're interested, also there's a shortcut. You can just go to admin.office.com as well. In this case, you will straight to that admin portal. So for now, we'll type in that portal.office.com. I already, in this case, authenticated using my administrator account. And in this case, I can use those web-based versions of Outlook, OneDrive, Word, Excel. In this case, I will start assigning and working with the roles available. So first, I click here in admin, and here in admin is that, remember, you can just go directly to the site, admin.microsoft.com. So here you can manage all the different applications and settings of that Microsoft 365 tenant. So in this case, part of Teams, of course. In this case, let's start just assigning roles. So we'll click here on the left under users, active users. In this case, I have some users available in my environment. And what I will do first, I will go to this user, Johnny, and we'll check assign roles. So you see, if you click on the name of the user, you have the account, devices, licenses. So now let's concentrate on that first tab, account. In this case, you have the groups that he's member of, and in this case, roles. This will represent basically administrative roles assigned to this user. In this case, if I click in manage roles, I can assign, in this case, one of those administrative roles. So by default, all users won't get any administrator access. So we'll select the second option, admin center access. And in this case, for now, let's concentrate just on Teams. As you can see, you can also limit all those different roles by product. For now, we'll definitely just target those roles. For example, you see that team service admin, remember kind of the highest level in terms of privileges available in Microsoft Teams, able to manage all the different settings at the service level. So we'll assign in this case that role to this account. So the change is done. I will also make sure that people have the appropriate roles. So I will switch to another user, Alan, and in this case, I will grant one of those support roles for this account. So same thing, I will click on the roles, manage roles, and in this case, you see, I talk about other roles, but on the list those are not available. So in this case, to have those other roles available, just need to click on that arrow at the bottom, show all by category. And in this case, they will show me like a more detailed list of all the different roles. And in this case, you see all the other team roles that are available here. In this case, I will assign that Teams Communicator Support Engineer role to Alan, and we'll select Save Changes. So that's on. So now, important also to take a look on the licenses, make sure that people has the appropriate licenses available. So what I will do, I will still in the same view from active users is where you can definitely double check also the license that are assigned for each one of these users. So I'll select the first user on the list, Alex, and in this case, I will navigate to that third tab on the right, licenses and apps. And here I will double check. In this case, you'll see location. So in this case, depending where actually is that location, will affect definitely several settings. In this case, I will select actually, in this case, let's select Canada for this user. You can also switch between country at any time. So we're actually gonna keep this as Canada. And after that, you see the licenses in this card are assigned to this particular user. In this case, just make sure you have that Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite, E5 license. And in this case, I have also that Office 365 E5 that includes Microsoft Teams. Also, if you click here on apps, you will get like a more detailed list of applications that are included into that bundle. And in this case, it will scroll down. You may notice Microsoft Teams is enabled. So definitely just double checking here. Okay, so that license is included there. So I will do the same thing for other users on the list. So first go to that Johnny user in this case. Remember, I assigned that Teams Service Admin role. I will switch to that third tab, licenses and apps. And in here, just also double check. In this case, I'm gonna keep this as United States. Double check. I have the right licenses assigned. Also, that Microsoft Teams license assigned is working properly. Let's go with the next one on the list, Lean. Cool, still United States. After that, Microsoft Teams looks good. Have just a couple more coming. Next one on the list, I will double check. Actually, just going back to that Alan account, and in here, also double check. License looks good. And last piece will be, let's take that Megan user. So here, just double check the same things. Go to the license and apps. Good, license looks good. And Teams, there you go, it's activated. As you will see, definitely you can have a mix of licenses. In this case, actually, you see I have 2 F3 licenses available. In this case, none of those are assigned, but definitely can have a mix. So definitely, we understand we have different needs. In some cases, users, depending on their profile, will need to get access to different tools. So we can definitely have a combination, and it's up to you to assign those licenses based on your best interest. So let's go with the next piece. Will be to explore that admin center in more detail. So 2 ways of doing and getting to the same place. So here on this Microsoft 365 admin center, on the left, if I click show all, I have that Teams administrator site available. So if I click in there, this will take me to that Microsoft Teams admin site. So that graphical interface where I can manage all the different settings of Microsoft Teams. On the other hand, what I always like to do, if you just go directly to admin.teams.microsoft.com, you will go directly into that Microsoft Teams administrator interface. So from here, remember, to access this administrator site, you need to have that service administrator privilege. In this case, I'm logged in using the same administrator account. This is a global admin. So of course I have access to the interface. So definitely over the next modules, we'll explain all those different settings in more detail. So for now, let's concentrate on all those different settings. I remember actually that I granted those permissions to that Johnny user. So let me show you. Actually, I will open a new session in here. And from that session, I will go straight also to that admin.teams.microsoft.com. There you go. And from there, in this case, I will sign in using a different account. So in this case, just double check that those permissions are working properly. And that's the sign-in name for that account of the other user that I delegated, remember, that service admin role. So in this case, that's my domain I have here. There you go. In this case, I'm using that on Microsoft.com domain. In your environment, definitely you'll be using something different. Just would like to show you. There you go. So I select no. And because I have the role, I can also, using that different account, log in and have access to all those different settings that are available just on Microsoft Teams. So for now, you will see all the different options. You can basically hide all the different options. Always a good idea to have the full list available in here. And in this case, I will click here in Teams. If I click here under Teams, you will see Manage Teams. So this will basically bring me a list of all the different teams that are created in this environment. And something that I have also available are those Teams policies. So just before going to that team policies, first on that Manage Teams capability available, keep in mind that for organizations that have less than 5,000 users, automatically like a organization group will be created and will include by default all the people that is part of that organization. So that actually have that public group. In this case, that will all the users in this tenant will be members of that organization team. So for now, actually, we'll quickly show you those team policies. So keep in mind from here, you can also add multiple policies, but you will have like a default organization policy that will affect, that's called global. And in this case, it lets you to create private channels or not. So from this, you can basically have this kind of capabilities at the level to basically run who should be able to create or not, in this case, private channels. Remember, we'll expand also on the different types of channels, but basically have either public that anyone can join or private, that definitely in this case, people will need to implicitly, for example, request to be included into that particular team. So for now, just to quickly show you those options, different also policies. For example, if I go to meeting policies, just to quickly show you meeting policies, you have also like a global meeting policy. And here you can definitely manage all those different settings. For example, allow, for example, meet now in channels. And also, for example, allow video. You can also enable all the different capabilities inside that Teams organization. So as people start, for example, scheduling meetings inside that Office 365 tenant, you can definitely disable. You have full control of all those different capabilities. And I will talk about definitely those collaboration settings. And for example, what happens if people could be joining from a different organization? Maybe you have providers or third parties that you need to collaborate to. So what will happen? You will, in this case, disallow people that is not authenticated. People is able or not to participate on these meetings. Is able to chat or not. So we have control of all the different settings. Definitely we'll expand about those settings in more detail during the next module. So for now, what I will do, I wanted just to show you the capabilities available on the command line as well. So remember, this is the graphical interface, one way of doing things, but you also have, in this case, also the command line. So just to show you the command line, we have a module, of course, in PowerShell that you can use in this case to manage that Teams organization from the command line. So what we'll do, I will open a new instance of Windows PowerShell. Let me zoom it here a little bit. Should be able definitely, this should be big enough to show you the commands that will be running. And in this case, first, actually, we'll need to install that module to manage Teams from the command line. So first, I will run this command, set execution policy. And in here, I will put it as unrestricted. So that will let me to, in this case, run any commands. Otherwise, all those commands need to be signed. So for now, we'll put it at as restricted. And after that, I will need to install that module. So to install that module, I will run the command install-module. And the name of the module in this case is Microsoft Teams with capital T. And this will install the PowerShell module to manage Teams from the command line. So that's what we'll need to do to manage the organization using the command line. So after that, a couple of NuGet packages that are dependencies. I'm going to put yes to install all the required dependencies. This wait shouldn't be long. Another also module. So install all the required modules in here. Yeah, it takes definitely should be fast. Let's wait for the installation to complete. Call suite completed. So now I will definitely need to authenticate. Remember, I was requested to authenticate when I use that session on the browser. So in this case, command line is not different. So first command that you'll need to execute will be like .connect Microsoft Teams. So that will help you to authenticate yourself. So this will give me a prompt that I will need to put the credentials to authentify myself. I will use actually the same account that I delegated that Teams server administrator role. So that is Johnny S. In this case is that M365. And my domain in this case is .onmicrosoft.com. And I'm going to put my password. There you go. Just authenticated, so successfully authenticated against my tenant. And here, just to show you the different modules I have installed, so just to run a get module. So I have in this case that Microsoft Teams module, and definitely will add more capabilities, or for example, add team users, connect Microsoft Teams, disconnect, and many other commands in this case to fully manage your environment using the command line. So all those settings that are available in that graphical interface basically have a command available on the command line. So all those settings, it doesn't matter what you're using behind the scenes, can help you to manage all those different settings. So whatever you prefer. And in this case, remember what I did before? I was doing all those changes one by one on the users. So in this case, definitely this is a big organization. Definitely not a good idea to check all those license settings and all those configurations one by one. So definitely can create the scripts that definitely will help you to automate the process and do this at scale. So next, what happens, for example, I'm not sure the commands. I can, for example, run that get command dot module Microsoft Teams. So this will provide me with a detailed list of the commands available in this module. So basically that PowerShell module added all those different commands available. So add team users, get CS user policy, get team channel, get teams app, get teams user. All those commands are available as part of that module. What happens if I'm not sure what actually one of those commands does? For example, let's say like that new team. I'm not sure actually how that command works. I can just do always that get help. Definitely is your friend. So you run that get help. And after that, just a space and the name of the command. For example, that new team. It will tell me actually what that command actually does. So definitely is the first time. You will need to just pull that content of the help. There it goes. Just finish installing that help from that site. And in this case, basically, it tells you the name of the command, synopsis, and the syntax that you need to use in this case to run the command. So definitely good guidance. And actually, what I also really like, you can also run that get help. In this case, new team. And after that, examples, for example. Just will show you a couple of examples, scenarios that I like, for example, to use that command. In this case, I can create a new team, take rates, and actually behind the scenes, if this is powered by an Office 365 group. So inside that Office 365 tenant, it will create a new group and it will create a new team inside Microsoft Teams. So definitely try to leverage those commands as much as possible. They're definitely very, very helpful, easy to get guidance about what actually those commands do. So that's kind of the command line, kind of the options they have available. Keep in mind that definitely for now, we understand still a lot of customers are using something like Skype for Business. So if you're using something like Skype for Business, keep in mind you may maybe recognize it. Some of those commands that get CS definitely come from Skype for Business. But for now, keep in mind that unfortunately not all the commands that are available in Teams help you to manage also on Skype for Business instance. So definitely need to install a separate module to manage Skype for Business instances. So to do that, you will need to download. In this case, it's not available directly from the command line as that Microsoft Teams module. So you'll need to manually, in this case, download is available on this link. And if this is something like a Skype for Business Online, just let me install that. Should be super fast. Just need to download that, install it. Awesome, successful. So after that, we'll need to definitely just open a new session. So let me open a new PowerShell session. Let me start fresh. And in this session, what I will do, I will import that module that I recently installed. So in this case, to import that module, same command, import module, but in this case is a different name. So the name of that module is a Skype Online Connector. There you go, so the module is imported. And in this case, you don't have like that command that allows you to authenticate. So you will need to create a new variable, session equals new CS online session. And this will basically prompt you for the credentials. So here, same user as before, I will put on that Johnny S at m365.allmicrosoft.com, and this will probably for my password. There you go. Just put in the password. I'm authenticated, so in this case I'm able to start working on the command line. I will definitely need to import that session. So import that PS session and just import that variable session. So in this case to authenticate myself against Skype for Business Online. And we'll be able in this case to work on the command line for Skype for Business. So I can do the same thing as before, remember. I can do that get module, Skype Online Connector, and after that, it will basically give me also prescriptive guidance. Also remember that get help. What happens if, for example, I would like to show you again just how that get help is very, very useful. So I go that get help. Let's say I try to run that get. I'm not sure what that get CS Teams messaging policy does. So just do the get help, and this will also give me that guidance. Remember, also have that dash examples at the end. It's provided with detailed examples, scenarios that you're likely to use this kind of command. So once you're done, also a good idea to close the session. In this case, it's not a browser, so I will need to kill that PowerShell session. So to do something like that, I need to run that remove PS session, and it will also provide that session variable. And that's how I will sign out in this case using the command line. So now just a last super short step that I would like to show you. So I show you how you can manage all those different settings on the command line, how you can manage all those different settings from that graphical interface. So what I will do now, I will go back to that session that I'm signed in as the admin. Also close this guy. And in this case, I will jump into the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. So from here, I will go to Groups, and I will add a new group. Just click here on groups, add group, and in here I will select the following. I will select Microsoft 365 recommended, and I will put the name here. I'm gonna put this as IT department. So that's the name of my group. I could also add a description like all the staff of the IT department. And in here as owner, I will put that user Johnny Sherman. And after that, I can also customize that email address. So I will customize that as IT department and the name of the tenant. So that's what I'll put in this case. So that will be the email address available for that. And remember that public can be public or private. And in this case, I'm going to put this as private. So only members can actually see the content of that group. And after that, I will not for now create a team. So definitely intentionally, because I will create this manually directly from that Teams interface. So after that, I'm going to select create group. And the group in this case is created. So I'm going to provide feedback. And just actually what I will do now, I will jump into that group that I can also just refresh. You see the group is there. So just click on this group that I recently created. I will go to members, and in this case, I will add some members. I will, in this case, let's select add members. And in this case, I will add Alex, I will add Alan, I will add Lynn, and I will add also Megan. So those are the members. And what I will do next, I will switch to a different client. On this client, I also have the Teams client installed. So in this case, on that other client, I'm using a different account, Megan, one of the members of that group. So that's the account I'm using in this case to sign in to the Teams client. There you go. And after that, what I will do, I will create actually the teams from that existing Microsoft 365 group. So this is the first time I'm accessing it to that user. Just select on that Let's Go option. Also have that QR code to install that on a mobile client. So for now, I will select that option on the left. You see there at the bottom, join or create a team. So I clear this option. Remember that I left this group as private. So in this case, you can see you can create a team or join a team. So I will do, I will select create a team, and you have two options. You can create this from scratch, so that will create also a Microsoft 365 for you behind the scenes. Or in this case, I will select the second option, create from an existing Microsoft 365 group. Remember that's actually I did it on that previous step. So that I will do here, I will select a Microsoft 365 group. You see in this case, I'm not able to select that because this Megan user is not an owner. Remember that Johnny was the owner, so only should be able in this case to create a new team based on that group that he owns. So what I'll do for now, just go back and create a new one from scratch. And also can identify membership, in this case private, public, or remember that org-wide that will include all the people on the organization. So we select in this case a public, so anyone can join that team. And in this case, I'm gonna put a name here. I'm gonna name this Teams Rollout. And after that, you can see I can add a description. I will just hit create in this case. And after that, I'm ready. I can add members into that team. So for now, I will add Alex. I will add also Alan. I will also add Johnny. And we'll also add Lynn. Add all these people. Just click on add. You can see I can identify the role that they have. By default, all of them will be members. So definitely will expand those capabilities later. So I can say, let's say that Johnny will be the owner, and hit close. So that's one way in this case to create a team. Another way to create a team, and actually I will switch in this case to use the web browser interface. I will go to teams.microsoft.com, and in this case actually we'll use a different account. You see that account belongs to Lynn, and in here I will, just to show you, I will definitely just give me the opportunity to work directly into the browser. And in here what I will do, in this case I will also select that option, join or create a team, and in this case I will select create a team, and in this case I will also select build from scratch, and I put in this case a private team, and I'm going to put the name as sales, create, and I'm adding members. In this case I will only just add Megan as a member. Just different ways. In this case, just adding Megan, in this case, just as member, close, and that's it. So as easy as that, you can start creating teams behind the scenes. Remember, those basically will create groups inside that Microsoft 365 tenant. So that's the end of this demo. Cool, so let's wrap up module number 1. So this was just an overview, what we have in Teams, the different capabilities in terms of collaboration. So definitely still a lot to learn. And in this case, maybe you were thinking about let's go to deployment. No, before actually doing the deployment, you need to take a step back and first actually plan about security, governance. And actually that's what we're covering on the next module. So we'll now take 10-minute break, see everyone back here, then we'll start with module number 2. So welcome back from the break. On that module number 1, we did just a quick overview. So now in module number 2, first you need to capture all these requirements in terms of security, compliance, your governance strategies. So maybe you have a lot of questions about security. So definitely need to address those things before proceeding with that deployment. So that's what we're covering in detail in this module number 2 on all the different tools that we have available. So you can easily apply those governance guidelines into Microsoft Teams. So let's get started with module number 2. So for module number 2, first let's start reviewing the agenda. So module number 2 is about implementing Microsoft Teams governance, security, and compliance. So here we have 2 lessons: implementing governance and lifecycle management for Microsoft Teams. Second, implementing security, and third one, implement compliance. So we're talking about deployment for Microsoft Teams. Before actually thinking about deploying and installing and configuring the Teams client, first you need to take a step back, and definitely you may have a lot of questions about who should be able to create teams, who should be able to join those teams, who should be able to publish messages, and also will we allow external people to collaborate in those teams? Are there also any naming conventions that we must follow for those teams? So definitely before start thinking about the deployment, we should definitely first address those questions. And on this module, definitely we'll see all the different technologies that we have available for you that definitely will help you to follow that governance strategy as you're going into Microsoft Teams. So let's start with the first lesson, implement governance and lifecycle management for Microsoft Teams. So keep in mind that identity provider behind the scenes for Microsoft 365 is Azure Active Directory. So every time that you create a new team inside Microsoft Teams, actually creates a Microsoft 365 group behind the scenes for you inside Azure Directory. So definitely that's what we have in there. And keep in mind that those Microsoft 365 groups are definitely targeted to help you and address all those different collaboration scenarios. So every time you create one group inside that Azure AD instance, basically that group will be enabled automatically, for example, with a mailbox in Exchange Online. It also will have like a site already created for you inside SharePoint. Definitely to facilitate all these different collaboration tasks. So all these things happens behind the scenes for you. Keep in mind also that we talked before module number 1, what's under the hood. Remember Microsoft Teams, remember all those different technologies like SharePoint, Exchange Online. We're definitely closely. So definitely you have like that crucial component that allow us to collaborate in that easy way is definitely that Microsoft 365 group. So naturally what happens behind the scenes every time you need Teams, you may have like a lot of questions. So usually definitely when I work with organizations, they will look to deploy Teams. To install the Teams client is super easy, but you may not have a lot of questions like, for example, who can create groups, naming conventions, any naming conventions that we should apply, meeting capabilities. So all the people should be able to send files, all people should be able to share memes or not in there. Also gets access. Maybe we need to collaborate with third parties or providers. So who should be allowed to log in and why they will be allowed to interact. And also remember talk about all those interesting capabilities in terms of integration. So we will allow any third-party apps inside this environment or not, or only approved apps. Maybe we would like to limit to a list of all those different available applications inside Microsoft Teams. And the last question, always important, you may have concerns about security. So what happens about the data that you will be sharing inside Microsoft Teams? In some cases, maybe you would like to definitely avoid that any intellectual property or any personal information can be filtered inside those chats. Could be also if you're working maybe in a regulated industry, maybe you still need to be compliant with things like PCI, GDPR. So we'll see definitely the tool set that we have available that can just be leveraged easily in this case to apply all those different governance strategies also on the data that is shared inside Teams. So just a quick overview in terms of all those governance requirements that you may have and just explore what can you do. So for example, when we talk about that, who can create that Microsoft 365 group? Who can create actually teams inside Microsoft Teams? So definitely keep in mind that depends also on permissions. In this case, also should be able to create a SharePoint site. Should be able in this case, if I create that Teams inside Microsoft Teams, you know that it will create a Microsoft 365 group behind the scenes, and that group will have like that mailbox in Exchange Online, and also we have that site on SharePoint. Also for those ad hoc one-on-one conversations, remember the files are stored on OneDrive. And also who should be able in this case also to collaborate separately. For in this case, for example, you have already libraries in SharePoint, you have also already, I guess, distribution leads. For example, maybe could be related to those permissions. So usually the people that already is allowed to create those sites, so people that's already allowed to create a new distribution group, usually is the people that should be allowed in this case also to create teams. Keep in mind that by default, everyone on that Microsoft 365 environment will be allowed to create a new team by default. After that, in terms of naming conventions, any definitely prefix, any particular convention that you need to follow to create those names of the teams. Yeah, you can also maybe would like to limit and use a specific naming convention. That way, definitely people should be able to use descriptive names and should be easily just to identify that group or that team to collaborate. After that, you may also want to block some specific words to be used on the names of the teams as well. In terms of that, Configure gets access definitely is all about collaboration with people external to your organization. So who can add actually those guest users, collaborators coming from a different Azure AD tenant. Also, if they should be able to collaborate and access the files inside those channels in Microsoft Teams. So definitely have control all over the options. You should be able to turn on or off all those sharing settings. Also, you can enable, disable guest access also on files on OneNote and also just to files inside those SharePoint sites as well. In terms of configure expiry, in some cases maybe you would like to set an expiration. So maybe some content that maybe could be that is, depending if you're on the industry, or maybe it could be just an internal policy. And for example, you said, let's say that all the content should be available and I should be able to navigate and browse through the content for the last 6 years. After that, the content will be expired, and definitely also customize the actions, what will happen next. So definitely all those things, you can be definitely easily apply those definitions inside Microsoft Teams. In terms of also policies, you have different set of policies. Maybe you have requirements in terms of also retention. Maybe you need to keep the data for a specific amount of time. Also something that we know as e-discovery. In some cases, for audit purposes, maybe you like to, for example, retrieve and access the content of those chat conversations. Yeah, you also have those capabilities available. And last but not least, also in terms of DLP, data loss prevention. What happens if those are critical Delphi records that are shared inside Microsoft Teams? And also if you operate in a regulated industry, maybe you definitely don't want, for example, people to, let's say, if I'm operating that financial industry, for example, to share credit card numbers directly into those chat conversations. So definitely can also put rules in this case and avoid having this kind of data shared in those conversations with Microsoft Teams. Also, you can also use things like templates. For example, to create a Teams, and that team template already has all those different tabs or different applications that are ready to use. Yeah, you can also definitely create templates. And also in terms of templates, remember where the data is actually stored inside SharePoint. So it could be also SharePoint site design templates as well. And the last piece also super important in terms of monitoring. You should be in control. When you talk about security, super important, always definitely have that visibility, who is doing what, who changed what into the environment. So we have different tools. Remember, we explored that Teams Admin Center. So we have also some interesting reports available in there. To understand those behaviors of end users, you can also set up easily alerts. You also remember in SharePoint, you also have visibility about those files and how users are interacting with all those sites. In Office 365 Admin Center, you also have interesting reports. You can set up alerts as well. For example, every time there's, let's say you put a policy to filter PCI records. So you don't want to share, for example, information related to credit cards directly in the chat. If someone tried to share this information, definitely this can be flagged out and it can send you an alert over email. And also we have interesting resources like an adoption content pack available, and also those reports that you can also get access. Definitely we'll explore those things in more detail. So let's move on. So Kerwin talks about create and manage Microsoft 365 groups. Keep in mind this is the ultimate enabler for those teams inside Microsoft Teams. So definitely will be one of those crucial decisions. Who should be able to create new Microsoft 365 groups? Keep in mind that by default, all the users in that Microsoft 365 environment can create a new team, but you may want to limit that. So definitely we'll see the strategies that you can apply in this case to limit who should be able in this case to create those new teams. So you can definitely limit this behavior using PowerShell. For example, you can designate just a specific security group and only the members of that security group will be allowed in this case to create new Microsoft 365 groups. So obviously this will affect the behavior in Teams. So only the people that are members of the group will be able in this case to create new teams. About expiration, things that you can do, definitely you can configure also Microsoft 365 expiration settings. For example, let's say that after, let's say 6 months or after a year, if no one is actually using that group anymore, you may want to definitely just archive that group or expire that group. And after that will be definitely maintained for 30 days after deletion. So during that time, you can just restore that group anytime, but after 30 days, all the data inside that group is deleted. So definitely super important to optimize the storage that you have available for that Microsoft 365 environment. You can definitely do those definitions. Keep in mind that for those settings, it requires to have an Azure AD premium license to have those capabilities, but you can definitely set up expiration for those groups. So it could be, let's say it was just a temporary project, maybe that you created that team for, and after that, let's say 6 months, that team is not actually relevant. No one is using that team anymore. So you can just automatically have that group delete for you. Another thing that you can do is also naming conventions. So you can also set up naming policies inside Microsoft 365 groups. And for that, also keep in mind also requires an Azure AD premium license as well, but you can definitely also apply just those naming conventions. For example, if they need to follow a prefix, usually it will be, for example, a couple of letters or 3 letters in this case to identify the company, and after that could be to identify the department and so on. So definitely try to make those names descriptive, so definitely can identify this is the department or this is the team that people should join. So they definitely can apply those naming conventions using those options inside Azure AD. Another option interesting, talking about security compliance. Keep in mind we have those very, very rich, powerful reports available in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. So from there you can have that visibility. For example, you can understand usage report, for example, number of users that connected to your environment over time. For example, there are any peaks, so you can understand definitely those behaviors from the users and actually what kind of meetings or what kind of actions they definitely were working on as they're connected to your environment. So definitely have the visibility and also even understand, for example, what type of clients they're using. They're using computers, they're using mobile devices. Definitely can have those detailed reports inside that Microsoft Teams admin interface. So keep in mind, required roles, in this case, to get access to those reports, definitely need to be either a global admin, either be a Teams admin, or either be a Skype for Business admin, and all those different reports that are available. So in general, we have also reports available in Microsoft 365. So the previous one, remember, were just targeted for Microsoft Teams, but overall also for Microsoft 365, you have also some interesting reports available. So you have things like executive summary, things like that, just easily, for example, have the visibility, types of devices that are connecting to the environment in the last 6 days, 30 days, 90 days, 180 days. You can also have that visibility about activation and licensing. Could be maybe you have like 1,000 licenses, but are actually users using that environment or not? So definitely have that visibility, that traceability, some powerful results, and actually behind the scenes, actually those are built inside the Power BI. And also you can of course create customized reports if you're familiar with Power BI. Yeah, you can also fully just grab that data and also build your own reports as well. So let's go to the next lesson here. It's all about implementing security. So we go deeper in terms of security for Microsoft Teams. So when it comes to security, keep in mind that Microsoft Teams, one of the first components, one of the first things that you need to definitely to get access to the service is to authenticate yourself. So in this case, in terms of authentication, Microsoft Teams supports at a glance 3 types of authentication. So something that we know, cloud identity. Basically, those are for organizations that create user accounts directly into that Azure AD environment. So definitely, maybe as you're starting, you don't require actually to have an existing Active Directory environment. So you can just create the accounts directly on top of Azure AD. Secondly, something that is known as synchronized identity. So for our synchronized identity is we have an existing Active Directory environment. You can synchronize that existing user and group base to Azure AD and use those user accounts for Microsoft 365. So definitely need to recreate your whole user base. You can just grab what's in your environment. And definitely in terms of authentication, we support also multiple schemas in this case to facilitate single sign-on. So definitely we're having like different usernames and password for all those environments. So you can just grab that existing password from that AD environment. And the last one, also something that is known as federation identity. So in this case, you can definitely federate when existing also Active Directory environment in case you're using that federation platform to authenticate to things like Microsoft 365 and other services as well. So there's definitely kind of the interesting capabilities of having that federation. Basically, anything that understands SAML can be authenticated against that federation platform, so not just Microsoft 365. And also on top of that, really useful in terms of security nowadays, having just one single factor to authenticate users, something like the password, is not enough in terms of security. So definitely is a good idea to have something like multi-factor authentication. Keep in mind that as part of Azure AD, we also have those things like MFA enabled by default. And keep in mind that usually we talk about authentication, either those are legacy authentication methods or modern authentication. Microsoft Teams use modern authentication. So basically we use things like SAML, things like OAuth, OpenID, in this case for authentication workflows. So in terms of security, super useful nowadays. Definitely configure something like multi-factor authentication. In this case, to apply those settings, instead of definitely going manually and one by one, for example, enable those MFA control for users, we have something that definitely is more simple, something that is known as conditional access. So with conditional access, you can actually do a definition of the rules. Something that we see here on the screen, for example, you can target specific users or groups. You can target the specific applications. So it could be something like Microsoft Teams. You can also build the conditions, for example, just outside that corporate environment or just connections coming from those particular countries. And after that, in access controls, you can see you can grant access, but you can require multi-factor authentication. So you can just easily, for example, apply those MFA controls here. In case also you have something like Microsoft Intune, can be also easily integrated. There's a control available here, device to market as compliant inside Microsoft Intune. So those controls can be definitely easily integrated in that definition. So in terms of security, we have also something that is known as Microsoft 365 ATP, Advanced Threat Protection. So definitely like to help you to enhance that collaboration. In terms of that collaboration, definitely we understand you're likely to share files, but in some cases, definitely hackers can take that as a vulnerability and, for example, put malicious code inside those files. So how we can avoid something like that? In this case, as part of that ATP service, we can definitely scan those files for you, and definitely we can identify potential malicious codes introduced into those files, and definitely can get that visibility. You can block access to those files, and also you can have alerts available that can be sent to an administrator. So keep in mind, though, that will apply for all the different services inside Microsoft 365, not just Teams. So this is just kind of like that visibility in terms of the reports and alerts that we have available. So definitely very powerful. So definitely reports and alerts based by identities. So it could be, for example, I can target just activity related to, for example, let's say global administrators. It could be any users. It could be also, for example, to specific data. So you can also create labels. So for example, you can set up alerts. Any alerts or flags in this case detected to particular confidential data based on these labels. Also could be devices. Could be that maybe, let's say in your environment, you only have iOS devices that are provider and that corporate environment. So maybe someone uses an Android device, maybe could be a red flag. So you can also have that visibility easily into those alerts. And also that service I just described in the previous slide, ATP, definitely alerts for those malware files that know were identified by ATP. You can also get those alerts available in here. You can also go deeper and easily create those reports. So last piece is all about compliance. So when it comes to compliance, we'll see different options that we have available in the toolset of Microsoft Teams. So let's start first something that is known as labels. So we have two types of labels. So either those are sensitivity labels, so definitely it's just more to help you to classify documents. In this case, let's say those are confidential or sensitive in nature. So maybe definitely just a handful of individuals should actually have access to those files. You can also be granular, for example, who should be able to read, who should be able to modify those documents. Definitely can also build those different sensitive labels, maybe information that is only available for people from your organization, that definitely may be information that is confidential in nature, and people outside the organization shouldn't be allowed to access this kind of information. Yeah, you can build those definitions on those sensitive labels. Secondly, we have also retention policies and labels. In this case, it's more for that scenario when you, for example, would like to have that expiration time. For example, let's say I definitely would like to keep information for the last 5-6 years available, and after that, what I will do, I will delete that data. I will still need to keep it. So definitely can also build those definitions in those retention policies and labels. So in terms of that retention policy, what you can do, basically that retention policy that is linked to that label that you created on that previous step, basically you can build policies around preservation. For example, just keep the data around a specific period of time. So let's say 5-6 years, but after that, I will not do nothing. So data is still there. Just make sure that data is not deleted. Secondly, you can definitely say after 5-6 years, I would like to just delete the data. And the last one is just delete. For example, information that has a specific threshold, let's say 1 year or 3 years, and after that I will just delete. I'm not make sure that in this case the data will be preserved for a specific period of time. So after that, data is just directly delete. So basically that's all the different definitions that we have on that retention policy available. And also keep in mind that basically this will apply in this case of Teams, will apply for those chat conversations, so one-on-one or one-to-many, that definitely explain insights that Teams client. Keep in mind those are Microsoft 365 compliance rules, so definitely will apply for more than just Teams. You'll see actually here, you can definitely specify locations like SharePoint, OneDrive, Office 365 groups, Skype for Business, Exchange. In this case, you can also just target also this specifically for Teams. Next policy that we have available is that create and manage DLP policy. Basically here we'll leverage those sensitive labels. And in this case, based on the definition of the label, for example, if this is confidential information, I can say, you know what, if this is an email and in the email I have the confidential word on the subject or on the content of the document that maybe is attached to that email, I definitely not authorizing this information to be sent to people outside the organization. That you can definitely easily build those policies. Keep in mind, those policies will apply all over across Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive, and of course, Microsoft Teams. And also in this case, for Microsoft Teams, particularly interesting, it will apply also for the conversations. So for all those chats conversation, let's say, if there's any, in this case, let's say, I will forbid in this case, for example, to share social security numbers. So in the case someone tries to share a social security number, I know that there's a specific format for that type of information, and in this case, you can just block this type of records to be shared into the conversations of Microsoft Teams. And remember the alerts talked about before, you can also just get an alert sent to you and definitely just report that someone tried to share this kind of information in a chat. So definitely can have that visibility easily with those DLP policies and block definitely people sharing confidential information outside the organization. After that, in terms of compliance, you may definitely in some cases have requirements that, for example, you will need, for example, have the information that is shared inside the organization to be definitely searchable and auditable. So in this case, you have something that is known as e-discovery. So with this e-discovery, you can basically create searchers. For example, let's say I would like to just filter out the conversations with a specific wording in all the Microsoft 365 organization. So definitely this will include Teams. And after that, you can actually extract the content of that information. So definitely be aware in some cases, depending on the industry and the policy of the organization, definitely you may want to have like an authorization of the users actually for you to actually be able to search and retrieve the content of their conversations. But in other cases, should be able definitely without authorization, depending on the domain, the industry you operate, to definitely do these kind of things. But keep in mind, this actually will extract information coming from emails, information coming from Microsoft Teams conversation, and you will be able to definitely get the visibility of the content of these conversations. After that, the last piece that we have available in terms of compliance and security. In some cases, for example, let's say you have C-level executives, maybe a team that may be just working in something that is not yet available for more people on the company. So maybe just need to keep that collaboration just for that specific team. So in case of those confidential nature environments or requirements, definitely have something that is known as barrier policy. So with those barrier policies, basically you can just forbid certain actions. For example, who should be able to search for a user, who should be able to add a member of a team, should be able in this case to start a chat conversation with that person, or also start a group chat with a specific distribution group. For example, let's say I have like a distribution group or team where I have all the C-level executives. In some cases, definitely not a good idea. Anyone should be able to just start a conversation with that group. Definitely. So for example, to limit these kind of operations, you can definitely create that barrier policy. So to put that in place, super easy. What you will need to do, definitely first just do the definition about all the different barriers. What you like to definitely to achieve. What you would like to, in this case, put that blocker who should be able, who should not be able in this case to talk to several groups of teams inside the organization. And after that, just part one, definitely segment the users, identify those barriers. Second, define information barrier policies. And third one, just apply the information of those barrier policies. So this was recently introduced and it definitely very, very powerful. Definitely heard feedback coming from users. Some cases definitely will definitely look into limit behaviors, in this case, to disrupt productivity. Keep in mind overall, definitely teams should be able definitely to enhance or improve that collaboration, but definitely things like this in terms of security, you may want to limit who should be able in this case to contact a specific team inside the organization. And last piece in terms of security is also super important to have that visibility. So definitely be alerted if something is going wrong inside the environment, if there's a potential security risk. So to do that, we have definitely all those alerts available. Remember, we can target by group, we can target by activity, we can target by label. So all those different things can be definitely used in the definition of those alerts. So at a glance, as you're working with those alerts, what you can do, first, definitely you need to be an administrator. And as an administrator, definitely keep in mind that you will create, configure, and turn on. You have also different default alert definitions available. You can just definitely, with a flip of a switch, enable those default alert policies. So after that, as users are performing those activities, so it could be, for example, like trying to share social security number on a chat, or like to send an email, and inside the content of that document that is attached, there's a word confidential. So as user definitely working on the environment, third step is basically this will create an alert, and you can just definitely set up those notifications. So they will send you an email, and on that email, you will get all the details. So basically who, what, and when exactly happened. So definitely describe very, very in detail what happened in the alert that you will receive over email. All those alerts also are available inside the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance Center. So that's kind of the last piece that we have in this module. So next we have a demo coming on. Definitely I will have the opportunity to show you how those things actually work in a real environment. So let's go to that demo. On that demo, I will show you, first of all, definitely how to implement that governance and lifecycle. So definitely things like those naming conventions. And also after that, we'll see that implement security for Microsoft Teams. Definitely we'll see the definition of those labels. And the last piece, implement compliance on Microsoft Teams. Definitely we'll see how those things in action are available in terms of that reporting and all those labels applied. So let's go with that demo. So let's go to that demo machine. And first step, actually we'll be working on the command line. I will create actually 3 different labels, in this case related to that sensitivity label. I will create a label called standard, another called internal, another called confidential. And after that, actually, I will be using those labels to create policies. So first of all, actually, I will let me sure I'm using, in this case, this definitely is created inside Azure AD. Just making sure I have that Azure AD preview module installed. So that's the Azure AD, just run that command, install module in a PowerShell window, Azure AD preview. So that's, in this case, the module we'll need to use to create the definition of those labels in the command line. Although keep in mind, it's also possible to create those labels as well on the graphical interface, but for now, I will use in the command line just to show you those capabilities. Behind the scenes, actually, if I do this on the graphical interface, it will actually create the labels. It will use PowerShell basically to do the definitions. For now, just directly run the commands here. Just wait a couple of seconds until the module is installed. Okay, so it's installing the package. There you go. So just install that module. So now, first step, definitely we'll need to connect. So just run that connect Azure AD. Definitely need to authenticate. I will authenticate using that admin from my tenant. Just that admin at m365.x. Cool, so just authenticating myself. And in this case, yeah, so let me put the password. So I'm authenticated. And in this case, first thing that I will do, I will basically use a template. So I'm going to put this in a variable. So I'm going to create the variable called template. So with the following command, I creating a template here. With the next line of code, I just validate if Azure AD is already set up or not. Otherwise, I'm leveraging that template. After that, I will create the different labels. So with this command, I first will create that confidential. You'll see standard internal confidential. All three will use the same base template. After that, we'll just set up each one of those different labels. So let's start with that standard label, general communication. After that, super important, just to make sure that I'm getting all the proper values. Just gonna put this setting dot values. Okay, yeah, you'll see those are the values of that standard setting template. So it's working properly. And now with the next command, I will just create the definition directly into Azure AD. So the command is new Azure AD directory setting dash directory setting. And in here, I will just add the definition coming from that variable setting that includes all the different templates that I created previously. Next step, what I will do, just make sure to populate those settings. So basically just creating the definition. So now it's time to assign it with that set Azure AD directory setting. There you go. So just assign definition. So for now, we just created those three labels. So the next step will be actually to assign those classifications. So we'll go back for now. We'll jump to the other client. And on the other client, I will go straight to the site, teams.microsoft.com. So for now, we'll open the web version. And here I will also authenticate using that account from Lynn. So the account is Lynn R at M365. X, the name of my tenant, dot on Microsoft.com. There you go. So just authenticating using that user. For now, we'll work on the web version. So use the web app instead. So remember that previously created sales team. So I click here on the three dots on the right, and I will select edit team. So here see that there's a classification added, so I must update those settings. So we'll select change settings, and in here definitely now we need to specify one of those classifications, those labels that I created previously. So for now, let's say that sales will contain confidential information. So I select that confidential category, and I will select that done option. There you go. So just successful again with that account and added that confidential classification. So let's go back to the other client, and in here I'm gonna double check a couple of settings. First of all, let's check that expiration that I talked about before. So those settings, remember, are part of that Azure AD. So in this case, to manage those settings, I will need to go to the Azure portal. So to go to the Azure portal, I will go to portal.azure.com, and I will authenticate with that administrator account. So for now, just select maybe later. After that, I will just choose the services available in here, and from the list of services, I will jump straight to Azure AD. So in Azure Active Directory, I will go to groups, and in groups you see different, remember all those groups basically are represented in here, are those teams that we have on that Teams interface. All of those are Microsoft 365 groups. Remember that sales team is basically the one that represents it. So for now, what I will do, I will just, under that all groups view, I will select this option on the left, expiration. Remember that the expiration setting is available, and in this case you can put a lifetime. So I'm actually gonna put, let's say, a custom 90 days. So after 90 days, there are no mails, no activity, no file shared into that Microsoft 365 team. It becomes stale, and remember, will be deleted, and after that still should be able in the next 30 days after that last day to recover the information anytime, but after that, after 30 days, the content will be completely deleted. So after that, always super important to send a notification. So in this case, let's say we'll send a notification to that user Johnny, just to notify in this case when that operation takes place. Any of those groups become in this case still after 90 days. So just put in the address here. So that's the name of my user in this case that will receive the notification, and you can see I can enable this for all the groups, or I can specify groups. So for now, actually, let's select specific groups. Otherwise, definitely will affect all the existing Microsoft 365 groups. And in here, you can see I will add, for now, I will select just Teams rollout that I created previously, only enabled for that one. It's always a good idea to start with a couple of groups, the existing features, and once you're ready, definitely maybe to expand those to other groups as well. So here you're gonna select save. So next, what I will do, I will go back to Azure PowerShell, and in this case, what I will do, I will create a policy, in this case, to limit who should be able, in this case, to create Microsoft 365 groups. Remember, this is possible using PowerShell. In this case, I will run a couple of lines in PowerShell and will select a group, and only the members of a group that will be known as group creators will be allowed, in this case, to create Microsoft 365 groups. And in this case, also be able to create teams inside Microsoft Teams. Remember, by default, the behavior is anyone should be able to do it, but for now, I will limit that capability. So first, I will run this command, new Azure AD group. And this command basically just creates a new group. Remember, it needs to be a security group but basically only those members of that group creators will be allowed to create new teams. So that's a common new Azure AD group. So that's a display name, group creators. This is a security group, may enable false. And that's the nickname, group creators. So after that, what I will do, I will, in this case, super important, I'll definitely need that object ID. And what I will do, in this case, I will need to replace that object ID with the value coming from that previous command. So let me prepare in this case, the next command will be add Azure AD group member, basically to manually add Lynn as a member of that recently created group on the previous step. So just let me add that command, and definitely I will need to grab that object ID from that previous command. So just manually running the command Azure AD group member, just to add a new member. I will need to definitely grab that object ID coming from the previous command. We just copy that value. There you go, so just grabbing that object ID from the previous group and adding, in this case, Lynn as a member of that group. It's just a command, definitely prepare this beforehand, so I need to definitely keep you waiting as I type in those comments. Next command, basically just grab the definition of the unified group template. Remember I created previously, and in this case, I would apply this to the recently group unified definition. All right, so that next command, just template, get Azure AD directory setting template. Basically, just grab that template again. After that, next command, also make sure the setting is available in Azure AD. Otherwise, I will apply it. Next one is just making sure that enable group creation, remember, is the feature we try to limit in this case, is basically disabled. So enable group creation false. So that will be the default behavior. And in this case, we basically just grant that capability only for the members of that group creators group. So that's actually what I'm doing with the next command. With Azure AD, share string, group creators, object ID. And now just we'll write that back into the configuration of Azure AD. So with those commands, basically I just limit, in this case, the creation of new Microsoft 365 groups. So this will also affect, remember, creation of teams inside Microsoft Teams, only for the members of that group creators group that I just added. So let's try it out. So we go back here. And in this case, I will also use the web version. And let me switch to a different user. Do a sign out. In this case, I will log in using an account that belongs, in this case, to Megan. Security will use as another account, and in this case, is that account of Megan. There you go. Cool, so for now, just also use that web version. So once I'm on that web interface, if I click here on the left, remember at the bottom that option, join or create team. So let's select that option. In this case, you see, I no longer have that create team option available because I limit that capability only for members of that group creators. In this case, Megan is not a member of that group. That's why in this case, is not able to create a new team, only to join an existing one. So see that setting we just modified before is working. So also on the Teams desktop application, you should see definitely the same behavior. So let's continue. Next thing I would like to show you is the creation of a naming policy. Remember, if you like to apply a naming convention, so definitely make those names descriptive. You definitely need to follow a 16 specific guideline. So to do that, also it's possible to do it inside that Azure AD. So I need to switch to that Azure AD, same place as before, Azure AD groups, and here in all groups, you see just under expiration, I have that naming policy. So that naming policy, definitely first, I definitely can add those blocked words, and I can also add the specific group naming policy. So for now, I will click on that naming policy, and in here you see I can specify this is the existing policy, I can modify that, or I can just add the prefix and that definition. So for now, what I will do, in this case, just specify for now the block words. So you can see this is a specific CSV format. So first I will download that CSV file to specify the definition. So definitely there's a particular format that I can add that block words. So definitely this will not allow to create any groups using the words that I can specify on this list. So once I open that file on Excel, I'll just add separated by comma. I would add all those words, in this case, CEO, payroll, and HR, let's say. So that will be my line. The works I will like to block in this case. Just let me save it. There you go. So now I'll just go straight to that step number 3, upload that CSV file. And we'll just type in again that CSV file that I just added previously. And I'm gonna hit save. There you go. So now I'm just gonna quickly show you that naming convention, the other tab. So in here, let's say in add suffix, definitely let's say there's a particular suffix that I need to follow. So we'll select attribute in this case, and we'll specify country or region. And in this case, for that country or region, let's also add a prefix. I will select add prefix. In this case, I will put a string, and I will put also, let's say, group. So let's say you need to specify in this case the group name. So the definition in this case will be something like that. You'll see group name, country or region. So definitely that's the naming convention that I should follow in this case. So after that, for now, just would like to show you that for now I have the time to apply it. For now, actually, we'll discard the changes. Not gonna save it for now. And let's proceed. What I'd like to show you definitely are those options in terms of security. So explore ATP and also the compliance options. So let's go to the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance Center. So to go there, just simply need to type in this URL, security.microsoft.com. Let me say maybe need to authenticate, maybe pick the single sign-on. Okay, there you go. So on that Security and Compliance Center. And first, let's take a quick look on those ATP policies. So on the left, just gonna click here in policies. And in here you see all those others I talked about before. Also device configuration. And in this case for now, let's explore that ATP save attachments policy. So this ATP policy basically will filter and scan for malicious code in all the attached files that are shared. It doesn't matter, in Exchange Online, in SharePoint, could be also in Teams as well. And it will basically help you to validate these kind of things So by default, definitely there are some settings that you can see, just need to enable this, and this will enable those capabilities in the whole tenant. So actually gonna turn this on. I'm gonna save it. Double check this is configured on your environment. And actually what I will do, I will work with those retention policies. Remember before I created that sensitivity policy, but now let's follow those retention policies. So those can also be created on a graphical interface. Remember previously I worked on the command line. In this case, I will go to that compliance center. So to go there, I'll need to switch to that protection office.com to go to that M365 compliance center. And in this case, I will use graphical interface to create those retention labels and policies. So from here, I will just click here. You will see I can create also those different classifications, data loss prevention settings. So for now, I will select directly that option under information governance. And in here, I will select retention. So here under retention, I will create, you'll see for now it's blank. From here, I could create the labels and the policies. So I will hit create, and this will walk me through a wizard that I can do all those different definitions. So from here, I'm gonna type in on the nails. Let's say that will be related to that sales retention policy. Description, just gonna quickly add something like retention policy for sales 7 years, let's say. That's retention time. After that, I'm going to select next, and after here, just need to specify for how long. So let's say for 7 years, and after that, based on which I will determine those 7 years. When I was created, only was last modified. In this case, let's say when it was last modified, and in this case, if we would like to delete or not the data after this time. So for now, let's say no. So data just will be maintained, it won't be deleted after that. Next option will be definitely locations, which all the different services that this policy will be applied. In this case, super important, make sure that this is enabled for now. Let's concentrate just on Teams. So let's select channel messages, and you can see here I can specify specific teams, or I can also exclude teams as well. So for now, I will hit the option choose teams. I will select choose teams, and in this case, let's select, let's say only that will affect only that sales team that was previously created. After that, just gonna hit next, review the settings, and after that, I will select create this policy. Now that's how easy I can create that retention policy. Now let me show you also how easy it is to create, in this case, that DLP policy. So for that DLP policy, I will also need to do the definition from the compliance center. So I need to switch to that data loss prevention node on the left. So we'll select that option, data loss prevention, and in here I will select that policy option. So here in policy, I will select the option create a policy, and in here definitely need to start from scratch. So things like PCI, IPA, and other are already available as a definition of things like social security numbers, driver license numbers. All those definitions already are available. Also, you can create a custom definition. In this case, let's say this is target for GDPR. So I will search that definition GDPR. So it's already there. And in this case, just need to specify a name. So let's name this GDPR DLP policy. So that will be the name for my policy. After that, on the description, and also let's add something like data loss prevention policy for teams. After that, just gonna hit next, and after that, locations that this policy will affect. So I will choose that option. Let me choose a specific location, so otherwise it will affect for all the services inside Microsoft 365. So actually let me toggle off that for Exchange, SharePoint, and OneDrive. And for now, let's concentrate just only on Teams. So if I don't select specific Teams, this will affect for all the different chat and channel messages. So I'm going to select Next. After that, find the content. You will see a lot of things already part of the definition, things like European debit card numbers, driver license numbers. Definitely need to start from scratch. The definition is ready to use. All those definitely types of data that are included into that GDPR definition. So after that, you will see what will happen if I detect that this type of content is trying to be shared. So in this case, definitely will be super important in this case to keep an eye if this is shared with people outside your organization. So let's keep that definition by default. After that, I select next is what you want to do if we detect this sensitive info. So in this case, definitely I would like to get another over email. And in this case, you can also specify a threshold, in this case, how many instances. So in this case, let's say just one instance. So just one instance, in this case, someone is trying to share just one of those types of data, and basically will be flagged out. After that, we'll see also on the user interface, definitely it will have like those tooltips. Basically, maybe you see this on Outlook, for example, if I try to send an email. So when this may be out of office, it will basically give you just an alert. Maybe this person is not able to reply because it's out of office. It will be kind of the similar behavior, but in this case, it will tell you, you know what, you're trying to share information that in this case is restricted using a policy. And also in this case, I will also double check and enable that restrict access, and basically will encrypt the content, and will basically block people from sharing and restrict access to that content. Definitely you don't want to have that content shared. After that, and next, we can also override the permissions. So what happens, definitely will block only for people outside the organization. And after that, definitely like to have that tip override the policy. In this case, they keep this as on. And if definitely someone would like to override the definition, let's select that option that required business justification. And also important, if there are any other rules that maybe can flag out as false positives, definitely we should be able to override this definition. So after that, do we want to turn on the policy or just test the things? So in this case, basically, as you're starting, maybe just like to try it out and not actually put this in place. So good idea is, for example, to keep this, I just would like to test it. So definitely if a definition is flagged out based on this condition, actually the content won't be blocked, but basically we just will get another, I will have that visibility. So for now, I will select that option. Definitely is a good idea, good starting point. I like to test it out first. And also select that show policy tips while in test mode. And select next. And in this case, I'm gonna hit create. So as easy as that, I created a retention policy and a DLP policy. And with that, it's the end of this demo. So in this module number 2, we just cover all these different technologies and tools that we have available in this case to guide you and apply those governance security requirements into that Microsoft Teams deployment. So now definitely you're ready to start thinking about that deployment, how we'll install the Microsoft Teams client, and all the different features that we have available in there. So let's take another 10-minute break, see everyone back here, then to begin with module number 3. So welcome back from the break. So on module number 3, what's coming? Now we're ready definitely to do that deployment. So maybe you're wondering what happens in case I have an existing Skype for Business environment. So definitely we'll see all the different strategies that you can apply to easily transition to Microsoft Teams. So let's get started with module number 3. So let's review the agenda for module number 3, last module of the day. So on this module, we have 3 lessons. The first lesson is all about upgrading from Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. The second lesson is to plan and configure network settings for Microsoft Teams. And the last lesson will be deploy and manage Microsoft Teams endpoints. So definitely just prepare the environment for deployments. So definitely that first lesson we'll see in case you have an existing Skype for Business environment, how can we migrate that environment into Microsoft Teams? And overall, in general, we see different tools that we have available that you can use in this case to prepare the environment, make sure in terms of bandwidth, in terms of also clients that you will use, that everything is ready for that Microsoft Teams deployment. So let's start with lesson number 1, upgrading from Skype for Business to Microsoft Teams. So here, keep in mind we have different paths to upgrade and go to Microsoft Teams. To have an existing Skype for Business environment, there are multiple ways in this case that we can manage that coexisting. So let's review those modes in more detail. The first one, you have on top Skype for Business with Teams, is that collaboration only. In this case, you can still using Skype for Business for all these capabilities like chat, calling, and meetings. And in this case, you will use Teams for basically collaboration inside those channels and teams. The other one is Skype for Business, collaboration, and meetings. In this case, you will still using that portion of chat and calling. Maybe you have like that integration with an existing PBX system. So you would like to keep Skype for Business still for those capabilities, but in this case, you will use Teams for collaboration inside channels and teams, and also you will use Teams to schedule online meetings. So those are the 2 coexisting modes. We'll be talking about Skype for Business and Teams at the same time. After that, also there's another coexisting mode that is called Islands. In that island mode, basically you will have 2 different toolsets running side by side. So you can still schedule meetings on Skype for Business, and users that still are having that Skype for Business client can connect to those kind of meetings. On the other hand, you have side by side also Teams, and in this case, you can also schedule meetings inside Teams. And in this case, people that would like to use the Teams client can participate on those meetings. You will see in this case also those chat capabilities are available in both platforms. So in this case, it's kind of those first step to transition and going to Teams. At some point in time, keep in mind, we're not going to keep this coexisting forever. So the end goal is to transition to Teams. So the other mode is that team only. That team only, basically, you will use only Teams, and at that point of time, definitely will uninstall and transition all those capabilities into Microsoft Teams. And the other one is also Skype for Business only. As the name thing self-explanatory, is in this case only to use fully Skype for Business, and usually it's just kind of the first step into that coexistence. Keep in mind, we'll see definitely approaches that you can take, but over time, maybe you'll start with that island mode, running both environments side by side, but at some point of time, you will need to transition all the existing user base to Microsoft Teams. So to configure those different coexisting modes, we have those options in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. Just need to click there on Teams Upgrade, and from there, you will need to select one of those different coexistent modes that I just explained on that previous slide. Another option that we have available here is that notify Skype for Business users that an upgrade team is available. Basically, it will just provide a pop-up to all the existing users that there's a newer version available of the client in Microsoft Teams. And after that, you can see, you can choose, in case you have existing customers with Skype for Business, what they will use in this case to connect to meetings. So they can use Skype for Business, or in case you already deployed the Teams client, maybe better idea to use Teams to connect to those meetings. So also that last option, super useful. You can download the Teams application in the background for Skype for Business users. So transparently, they will also get that application downloaded and installed for them behind the scenes. So definitely just one option. Keep in mind you have another solution in this case to distribute software, something like System Center Configuration Manager or others. Definitely can still leverage those tools, in this case to distribute the Teams client. We'll talk about that also in more detail on the last lesson. So we're talking about that coexistence. Keep in mind that maybe you're wondering what happens about all the existing meetings. Maybe you have a recurrence meeting, let's say with your team, let's say weekly, monthly. So what will happen with all those meetings that you already have on your calendar? In this case, those also will be transitioned for you. So we have a service that is known the Meeting Migration Service, and basically will migrate all those pre-existing meetings in your schedule automatically as you transition to Microsoft Teams. So every time, for example, you migrate online, it's only in this case, this will also migrate all the meetings in your calendar. Keep in mind also there are also multiple ways to interact and basically trigger that migration. So an administrator can also modify for the audio conference settings, and as they modify also those conference audio settings, for example, I can use the conferencing capabilities in Teams. This will also automatically will trigger that migration of all the elements in the calendar. And also every time, for example, a single user is upgraded to Teams only mode, also automatically will just migrate whatever is in that existing calendar. And also keep in mind, you can also run those commands and modify those settings also directly from the command line. So in PowerShell, you can also control and initiate manually the meeting migration service as well. Couple of things that we have control also. You can disable that service you would like to. You can disable that at two levels. So the first one is for the whole tenant, and second one only for the changes related to audio conferencing capabilities. So that's the first lesson. Just for that coexistence, if you have an existing Skype for Business, keep in mind definitely very, very useful. Keep in mind you have existing environments running Skype for Business. Actually, this is close to end on life. So actually July 2021, actually will be retiring basically support for Skype for Business. So by that time, definitely you should already have all those clients migrated, transition fully to Microsoft Teams. So let's go with the next lesson, is plan and configure network settings for Microsoft Teams. So this is independently if this is a migration or a brand new deployment. So definitely it's a good idea to double check that you have enough bandwidth, enough capacity to definitely offer a good end user experience. So we'll see the different tools that we have available with that purpose. So let's start with the overview of the Teams networking requirements. So overall, we have three types actually of directions in which traffic flows. We're talking about Teams. The first one, keep in mind, the traffic that is sent from that Teams client over to Microsoft 365 on the cloud is one type of traffic. Secondly, also peer-to-peer real-time communication. For example, every time, let's say, I schedule a one-on-one audio or video conference with someone else, definitely will establish like a peer-to-peer link, and the traffic will flow between those two participants of that meeting. And the last one also, this is one-to-many, also will establish like also that connection, and the traffic will flow between all the participants on that same meeting. This traffic will flow in real time. So basically that's kind of the traffic that we must consider. Definitely this will impact, will depend. Definitely people is working still maybe on the corporate network, and also as people working outside the corporate network. Keep in mind there are some requirements in terms of minimal bandwidth that we require for all those different capabilities that we have available in Teams. So we have tools for that. You need to start from scratch. So definitely super important to double check, for example, in case you have proxy servers, that you're able to connect to the Microsoft 365 services running on the cloud. You have enough bandwidth, that network health is good. So definitely need to plan those things before actually installing that Teams client. So a couple of tools that we have available for you. So definitely need to start from scratch and figure these things out by yourself. So the first thing that we have available is that Network Planner. So Network Planner is integrated into the Teams Admin Center And from there, you can basically build profiles or personas. And for example, you could say, I have 200 users that will only use that chat capability, but I have 100 users that will heavily use, let's say, audio conferencing capabilities. I have another set of features that will be used also by a different type of users on mobile devices. So basically, I've built all those different profiles, and based on this definition, this network planner will tell you what is the expected amount of bandwidth that you require in this case to fully support all those different features. So keep in mind, to run that network planner, it requires at least permissions, either you to be a global administrator, being part of that role, team service administrator, and also that team's communication administrator role. Just need to create the personas, build the plan, and create the report. Actually, we'll be doing this during the demo. Next tool that we have available is also that network testing companion. That network testing companion, we'll see basically need to run a couple of commands in PowerShell to import this as a module, and after that you can run this tool on demand, and basically will simulate traffic coming from a client and connecting to all those different services in Microsoft 365, not just Microsoft Teams. And definitely you can double check if that capacity is enough. You can offer a good end user experience or not. So we'll provide you with detailed guidance of the results. Also, we'll measure latency. We'll also double check if you have enough bandwidth available. So that's all we have in that network testing companion. This as well, I will be showing you how it works in detail during that demo. Just a quick review. Keep in mind that we have different ports and protocols that are used by that Teams client. And the first subset of actually protocols are not related to real-time traffic. So for example, every time, for example, consuming those files, remember, now that those are stored in that SharePoint online. So every time also, for example, like sending a chat message, in this case, I'm using also Exchange Online behind the scenes. Basically, this will use a combination usually between HTTP, HTTPS traffic. So we'll use the standard TCP ports for that. We'll connect from that client into that destination of the services running on the cloud. So this is for non-real-time traffic sent from that client. And the second one is for real-time meta traffic. So all audio, video communications that are flowing from that Teams client will use a different set of protocols. In this case, also have a specific range that will vary from 50,000 to 50,059. And this is UDP traffic on the source or on the client, and on the destination is also UDP traffic. And you will see is basically a subset of different UDP ports that I will connect on that destination. So definitely you need to double check that the client can communicate over those ports into that destination inside the Microsoft Cloud. So those are real-time traffic communication. So how can we ensure there's a priority? So definitely there's a principle known as QoS, quality of service. So you can also implement QoS for Microsoft Teams. Basically, this will just give a higher priority to that traffic related to both audio, communication, and basically this traffic will be sent over that link with a higher priority. So you can do that also with Microsoft Teams. And the rest of the traffic in this case will basically get a lower priority. So basically, two mechanisms to deploy this, either one using tags or ACLs, and the second one using also GPOs, group policy objects, on directly into that Teams client. Or you can also use a combination of both. Basically what it will do, it will just that extra tag on the traffic to identify that this traffic is related to audio video communications and will get that higher priority. So definitely you also need to know those configurations into your networking devices. Something interesting, you have an existing QoS definition for an Skype for Business environment. So already maybe went over that in that Skype for Business environment. Keep in mind actually that Teams will honor those existing definitions in the environment. So definitely can do those. And usually a good idea is to have that combination of both methods between that GPO definition and also those ACLs or tag definition. Definitely usually is the best idea. Keep in mind that also those tags, usually when to apply this in real life, when using something like ExpressRoute, in this case you have a private dedicated link between your corporate network and the Microsoft Data Center. So definitely in this case it makes sense. Definitely you can prioritize that traffic, and also you have like a expanded or a one network, so that wide area network. You can also, for example, basically tag the traffic that's sent over those links and give that traffic a higher priority. But in this case, keep in mind, if I'm connecting from home and as I'm using just directly the internet, on the internet, actually those tags cannot be applied. Usually that's why you also modify those settings in your own networking devices. So definitely just keep in mind. In some cases, maybe using also VPN. In some cases, actually, it's not a good idea to use QoS over VPN links. Just definitely be aware of that. And that's how you can just give a high priority for that traffic related to audio-video communications. So a couple of things also have available, basically to have that visibility, what's going on in terms of the communications, if actually users are having like a good user experience or not. So definitely can also create reports, and on those reports basically can also create labels. Basically can create a definition of your physical location. So say this is my main office, this is all the different branches. You can assign also the definition based on IP addresses that are used by each one of those locations. And after that, you can also create and get that visibility, how the traffic is flowing between all those different locations and a detailed well. So we have also those reports available from there on the Teams Admin Center. And the last lesson for this module is deploy and manage Microsoft Teams endpoints. So here definitely talk more in detail about the clients that we can use. So of course, things like mobile devices can also have a Teams client installed. So definitely can expand on those capabilities. Is also important to plan that beforehand, how we will deploy and manage the installation of those clients for Teams. So that's this last lesson. So let's start with a quick overview of all the different Teams clients. So in this case, keep in mind you have desktop clients, and we have also a desktop client available for all the major operating systems, like Windows, of course, also for macOS and also for Linux. So we have a client for all those different operating systems. We also have also that web client. In this case, using any browser, you can just connect to teams.microsoft.com and also have the same capabilities, but on a web interface. So most browsers support this web client. That's just a good idea. Make sure you're always using like the latest version of the browser, and they will support definitely most of those different capabilities available on that web interface. And the last one, also popular nowadays, definitely in some cases, those are remote workers or first line workers. In this case, they likely have something like mobile clients. So for those mobile clients, definitely support client for Android, client for iOS. So definitely those are supported nowadays. You know, back in the days, you used to have a client also for Windows Phone, but now actually is no longer maintainer. That's actually only support for now Android and iOS. So how we can handle that deployment? Multiple ways in this case to deploy that client of Teams to the devices. So the first one, if this is that desktop client, we can use, for example, just double check first that you're running like a supported operating system. In this case, the minimum requirement is to have at least Windows 8.1 or later. And if this is a Windows Server operating system, at least running 2012 or 2 or later. So we have also an installer for both 32 and 64 bits. For macOS, at least 10.10 or later. And for Linux, we support both dev and RPM format for that Teams clients. Definitely most distributions like CentOS, Red Hat would support those RPM packages. And also for that dev, most also Debian-based distributions will support that type of package. Keep in mind, another way of distributing also or deploying that Teams client could be also using something like VDI, virtual desktop environments or infrastructure. So definitely you'll take the time to cover that in more detail in the upcoming slides. And for the Team mobile clients, mine just will depend. You need to grab that client, if this is Android, from that Google Store. And if this is iOS, definitely just need to grab from that App Store. Also for that web client, basically just make sure you have the latest version of that browser available. And in this case, super important how you also will manage the update. Keep in mind that now actually we're introducing new features every 2 weeks. So super important, make sure you're running the latest version so that you can definitely leverage all those latest and greatest features that we're adding every 2 weeks. So let's review that VDI, Virtual Desktop Infrastructure Environment. So on that VDI, just another way in this case to deploy that Teams client, we have 3 main components. The first one will still definitely require that operating system. On top of the operating system, we'll deploy applications. And on top of those applications, definitely we'll need to customize the environment. So basically, each user, we have like their own profile. We have that user-defined data. So that way, I'm not just grabbing a random template of that operating system with the applications. In this case, we'll customize the environment with the data that belongs to each one of the users. So multiple ways in this case to basically distribute that client over VDI. And definitely took the time to explain all those different methods in this case to distribute the client if you're using something like VDI. Just now to go deeper, we're talking about VDI. Keep in mind that it's kind of like an interesting promise, definitely completely dynamic environment. So that way, usually we have like that operating system, application and user profile definition. And on the other end, you will have like a brokering system. And that brokering system basically will help you to handle like a pool of hosts. And on top of those hosts, you will have like just that template of the operating system and the application installed. So every time, for example, a user is connected to that environment, that broker service basically just grab that definition, also will grab the data that belongs to that particular user to customize the environment. So that's basically what it will do behind the scenes. So we have our own solution. We talk about also that virtual desktop environment solution that we have available in Azure in a moment. So in terms of deployment models, just let's take a quick look about the different stages that you should follow if this is that virtual desktop environment. So the first one, definitely you need to prepare. So to prepare, definitely you need to provision that Windows image, the operating system. And after that, you will need to deploy also that image across that multiple pool of hosts. So here, super important. This is definitely kind of like that step-by-step for our own solution that is available in Azure. So for that virtual desktop solution that you can just provision in Azure, when you're preparing those steps, definitely just need to make sure you have an Azure tenant or an Azure subscription. On top of that Azure tenant, set up Azure AD for authentication, integrate with Active Directory domain services, because definitely would like to have single sign-on with existing Active Directory environments. After that, provision all the required permissions. So definitely do like that separation. Maybe some people will definitely need to have access over the environment and control the applications that are deployed on top of it. But other users definitely have different profiles. Definitely just make sure you follow that least privilege principle. After that, just need to configure that virtual desktop tenant on top of Azure. And then we're ready to go to the second stage, that is basically prepare that deployment. So in this case, you will create and customize that pool of hosts available basically to host that image that you deployed on that previous step. So in this case, we have Windows Virtual Desktop available in the Azure Marketplace. So definitely kind of like a super easy guide to follow, 6 steps. Just follow those steps. So definitely this will help you to provision that pool of that farm of hosts. After that, also as part of that deployment, you also need to select the model in this case that you will use to deploy the applications on top of that environment and how those applications will be also distributed to the users. Last step is basically to optimize. So once we have that environment up and running, is not the end. After that, also you need to optimize that. So definitely you need to customize, for example, the environment. So basically from where we'll be grabbing, for example, that user profile data information. So in this case, because this lives on Azure, you can definitely use things like Azure File Sync. Basically, you can just store the definition of the profiles inside an Azure file server, inside an Azure storage account. So definitely multiple ways in this case that you can optimize this, make sure that that data is correctly separated depending in all these different profiles or users that you have on the environment. So we have something that is known as FS logics profiles that will help definitely to easily just create those profiles, simplify the process overall. Otherwise, for example, you can have just one single image, and based on that single image, you definitely need to do complex work. It takes to customize the image every time. For example, each one of those different user profiles will be connected to that single image. Actually, we're going to expand on those methods on the upcoming slides. So in this case, to distribute applications, basically we have 4 options. The first option, in this case, you can create images by role. So let's say I have an image for marketing with all the required applications for that department. I have another image for finance, and I have another image for engineering. In this case, each one of those different basically definitions which have like the different applications that each one of those different roles requires. So definitely you will have multiple pools, and each one of those pools we have just that single image, and depending on the role that the user belongs to, you will just connect to that particular pool to grab that image. So definitely it's one way of doing. Second option could be like that traditional approach that we call this that app layering. In this case, you will have like that single layer applications. You have just multiple applications, and just based on the definition of the profiles, basically the user just grab one or other of those applications from the list, depending on the profile. But those applications are just kind of like a single definition, a single list of all the applications that are available in the environment. So in this case, definitely you'll need to set up all those policies so that way you properly are filtering the applications depending on the profile. And in this case, licensing definitely could be one of those challenges that you need to face in that model. Option number 3 could be application streaming. In this case, application streaming basically will go with a cache that lives into that operating system. So every time there's a new session started from the end user, basically they will stream the application, is ready to be used, and basically will connect just to the server and will emulate like the application is installed into that local instance, but everything actually is running behind the scenes on the server. So also there's an interesting approach, but you will need to definitely manage additional infrastructure components for that streaming portion. And also what happens if there's a newer version available, maybe the first with what's in that local cache, maybe you'll need to repackage and add that newer version of the application. So the last one is actually kind of the recommended one. So this was recently released in private preview, something that is known as app streaming. It's actually kind of like an interesting combination. Definitely take those advantages of using that streaming capability, and also kind of like the definition based on profiles. So in this case, not required in this case to repackage, because we use actually like a new format. It's not an MSI file, it's an MSIX file. In this case, it's the native format that definitely don't require you to repackage if there's a newer version of the application. It would also simplify and reduce the performance impacts. And in this case, the applications will be actually stored off that Windows disk that you have inside that host. Super easy in this case. And for users, definitely they cannot notice actually the difference. So for them, it's like the application is locally installed into that environment, but actually behind the scenes, it's just basically doing that streaming, and it's just grabbing the definition of the profile coming from that file share. So super interesting that we have to offer with that latest version, in this case, to distribute application. In this case, if there's a newer version, they need to create that newer version into the environment. Super easy, no requirements in terms of repackaging that application on top of that BDA environment. So this is kind of like the highly recommended one if you're looking about those different models. Otherwise, I know it's still popular, that option number 2 that we just reviewed before. So just let's go back and review for that case of Teams. So if we compare both things, so BDI and Teams, what would be the base approach? So in this case, keep in mind that as that Teams client is basically either is a stream or is locally installed, or just grabbing that Teams client from a list of applications into that BDI environment. So as that Teams client is basically interacting, now you know the different types of protocols that we require for that client to work properly. So in this case, for those member protocols, non-RTC, non-real-time communication, it's okay, no problem. But for those audio-video communications, definitely is a good idea to keep in mind optimization, how we can actually ensure and have a good end-user experience for those VDI environments. So in this case, if this actually environment you don't have any audio-video optimization, definitely have like a poor end-user experience on that VDI environment is actually a good idea. In this case, to use that optimization of audio-video redirection. Keep in mind, because this is living in some server in that pool, if you don't optimize that audio-video communication, basically the traffic will flow between the different hosts that basically support that VDI client. On the other hand, if you use that optimization A/B redirection, in this case, definitely you don't need to send the traffic across those hosts. So the traffic should flow directly between the clients. So definitely highly recommended, and it's actually one of those capabilities and features that are available with that new MSIX format. So last piece, just before transition to that demo, keep in mind we have a way to manage configuration profiles, and actually you can manage devices. So things like IP phones, collaboration files, definitely are available there from a single place. So for example, you can set up definition of different phones. You can also build, let's say, a profile for offices in East Coast, offices in the West Coast. And just based on that definition, for example, you can set up things like what will be the time definition. Also, if there's a PIN required, what will be the definition of that PIN, if it is a 4 or 5 digit configuration of that PIN. And you can just deploy that configuration directly to the devices from a single place. You can also have the options available directly from that Teams admin center. So that's the last piece. Now it's the time to go to that demo. So on that demo environment, what I will do actually, I will show you all those tools that we have available in this case to prepare the environment. So I will show you that network planner. I will show you also that network companion tool. And after that, also show you those options in this case to provide team resources. So let's go to that demo. Just connecting to my demo VM. What I will do, I will go straight into that Teams admin center, and I will use that network planner and will create like 3 different branches. One will represent something like New York headquarters, after that Los Angeles office, and after that a Houston office. On that headquarters, let's say I have 1,000 users, in Los Angeles 250, and in Houston I have 150 users. So based on those definitions, remember that network planner will basically provide recommendations of the minimal bandwidth required to assure a good user experience. So let's go just to that Teams admin center. So Teams admin center, have a category, remember, on the left. If you click on planning, I will click on that network planner tool, and here on add a new network plan name. I'm going to name this Contoso plan. Sorry, a little typo there. Contoso plan. For now, I'm going to add in. I'm going to put this Contoso Teams network plan. Apply, and after that, we will be able to add the different personas in here. So we'll see just the plan. After that, I will click on the second tab, personas, and in here I will add a new persona. In this case, persona name, I'm gonna name this New York office. Let's say New York office will be like the New York users. In this case, let's say what kind of features those users will use. So let's say actually headquarters, let's say all users will leverage all different capabilities, included PSN connectivity. After that, we'll add another persona, in this case for Los Angeles. I'm gonna know this as Los Angeles office Teams users. gonna put also same on that description. There you go. And in this case, for Los Angeles, let's say that all the capabilities will be available except that PSTN capability. So for now, just added 2 personas. And what I will do here, I will add a new network site. So just go back to that network plan, click on that name. And in this case, we'll add a new network site to associate the personas to. And in this case, network site name, I'm gonna put this as New York HQ site. You can also add a description there. Let me just, for now, just in terms of that demo, just gonna quickly paste a description in there. After that, network users, let's say, remember, say they have 1,000 users in here. Network settings, they have different, let's say, IP address ranges in here. So have, let's say that 172.16.0.0, and in this case, using a max of 16 bytes. After that, I'm gonna just turn on, let's say, have a like express route link. Let's say also in terms of internet capability, you can see that what will be basically that capacity of the link. So let's say have 1 gigabit per second. After that, in terms of PSTN capabilities, let's say we'll have only voice over IP. So actually click on save. And in here we have just added that site. So we'll also add another site, in this case to represent that Los Angeles office. So add another site. I'm going to name this one Houston site. Also for now, just for the demo, I will copy. There you go. Just type in that, grabbing the definition. There you go, description. How many users in this case? Let's say I have like 150 users. In this case, let's say using a different IP address range. Mask of 24 bits. After that, in this case, I don't have express route. Let's say this is connected to the one. In this case, that one link is a capacity of 400 megabits per second. In this case, Q will, let's say, have a capacity of 50 megabits per second. And for video, I have 100 available. After that, in PSTN egress, let's choose also just voice over IP. In this case, not direct internet connectivity. After that, I'm lacking also the other one for Los Angeles. So I'm going to name this Los Angeles site. And in here, just going to also grab that description. There you go. And in this case, how many users? In this case, let's say I have 250 using a different address space. And using a mask of also 24 bits. In this case, we don't have also express route. Let's say I'm just connecting over that one link. In this case, it has a capacity, let's say, of 500 megabits per second. And I have allocated 100 for audio and 200 for video. And just gonna hit save. So I have the 3 different sites. And also remember, before I created just the personas for New York and Los Angeles. So what I will not, basically I will just create a new report. So I go here to report. I will select that start report option. In this case, I'm gonna put a name here as Contoso report. In here, I'll just see that's the estimation. So definitely we'll need to step those values. So see, I have 3 different sites. So I have that Houston site. So for that one, Let me just switch to SabreNet Houston. It will be actually, let's say, kind of similar to Los Angeles. And definitely based on the capabilities that I have available in there, you can just also have a combination of all these different users. So for now, what I will do, let me just set up also just each one of the different personas. So let's say in this case, users will be just a difference in terms of how many users. But in terms of capabilities, remember that was the definition of the persona. It's pretty similar between Los Angeles and Houston. So basically no PSTN connectivity. So for Los Angeles, it's also that persona, but here we have 250. And for New York, I will have just New York office persona. And let's say I have 1,000 users. So after that, we'll just hit generate report. In this case, it will tell me, you'll see the capacity required in this case to assure a good end user experience for each one of those different sites. So definitely that's the amount of bandwidth that is expected to be available based on the amount of users and the features that I selected that users will be using in all those different locations. How much of this belongs to audio, how much of this belongs to video, if they're doing things like screen share, and also connectivity to servers of 365, and also connectivity if in this case I was not using that PSTN connectivity. But in case you're using PSTN connectivity, you can also have that visibility here. So after that, you can also have different views here available, and even you can also export those results to PDF. So that's kind of the first tool that we have available in here. So interesting, and amount of bandwidth in this case that it will dedicate. Definitely just choose those. I'll run the report again. You'll see there's a value. In this case, definitely we need to saturate and just use all the bandwidth just for Teams. We understand definitely need to share that link with other types of services. So it's up to you in this case to limit the allowed bandwidth that we can use. So definitely the codecs that we use behind the scenes will definitely adapt based on the amount of bandwidth that we have available. So after that, let's transition to the next tool. So next on that demo, just would like to show you that network companion. So for that network companion, first I need to basically import a module in PowerShell. So that module is going to run the command install module. In this case, the name of that module is network testing companion. There you go. So basically that will install that network companion for me. After that, it's gonna import all the required libraries. Definitely should be fast. Let's give it 1 second. There you go. So it's installed. So after that, I'll run another command, invoke tool, not tool. So tool create shortcut to create the shortcut into the desktop. And after that, just we go back to my desktop and I have a new shortcut here, and this will open that network testing companion. So keep in mind this will emulate traffic to Office 365 and definitely will tell you if the link I have available here is enough or not actually to simulate real communication to that Microsoft Teams service. So in here we have already those some checks like operating system looks good, internet connection looks good, and after that also would like to certify the device you're using will work properly with Microsoft Teams. You can use that assistant. And in this case, I'm interested to run that network assessment tool. So first, I need to definitely just install that tool to begin. Just gonna hit that install option in here. Super fast, so it's ready. So now I'm just gonna hit the start. And this will basically run all the tests behind the scenes. So let's allow the access of that UAC prompt. All right, so just complete the test. Just gonna hit view results, you'll see seems there's an issue in this case. So I click here on report, will give like detailed guidance, what's going on, maybe what failed. Basically, we'll double check that all those connections to the services of Office 365 are working properly. And I can ensure in this case a good end user experience. Definitely in other tests, you see seems to be okay. That network quality, definitely all the other metrics have passed. So you can definitely have that visibility, be prepared beforehand, and see if the environment will guarantee a good end user experience. So that's the Network Companion tool. So after that, just would like to show you that device configuration capability. So remember, from Teams, you can also manage devices settings as well. So to do that, I will just go back to that admin center, and on the left, I will click here on devices, and you see I have the phones available in there. And from there, I can actually assign those configuration profiles. So actually, let's create a new configuration in here. So I go to configuration files, and I will add a new configuration profile for the devices. So in this case, let's name this one New Your Teams Desk Phones. Also a description that will represent basically the devices available in that New York headquarters. So let's go back here. So let's say that device lock enable, in this case timeout 30 seconds. You'll see the pin that you have for those devices. After that, the language. After that, time zone. So in this case, let's say the time zone is UTC -5 Eastern time. That's the date format. And after that, time format, AM, PM, 12 hour. And after that, display screensaver. Let's keep this as on. Display screensaver. Let's say the timeout. I'm gonna change this to 1 minute. After that, contrast. Let's also enable the contrast, and office hours, let's say, are from 8 to 5. And also let's enable that power saving. And on network settings, let's enable definitely DHCP, a good idea. Login enable. For now, let's keep this as off. And after that, what will be, let's say, the default admin password for those devices? So I'm gonna keep this as pass at word 1. So that will be the password, let's say, we'll assign this case, and I'm gonna select save. And after that, I can definitely assign those profiles. You can say I can assign those profiles to multiple devices. You can also create multiple profiles in here. So just easy as that, I can manage the settings and it will be deployed to devices. So the last piece I have to show you here is also in some cases we'll need to create resources that will basically represent equipment on the rooms. And in this case, you have something that is known as Microsoft Teams Room. So we create those basically resources that will represent not users, will represent devices. So for now, actually, we'll work on the command line to create those devices. So I'll switch back here to PowerShell. And actually, this is done into that Exchange Online command line. So first, just run my command user credential. So I can authenticate. I will just provide authentication information of that administrator of the tenant. So that's my admin, n365.onmicrosoft.com. I'm gonna put the password in here, and I will authenticate with that administrator. So after that, we'll just need to open a new session, but in this case to Exchange Online. Before, remember, actually I was working with Azure AD, so that's why I need to do the transition. So this will open a new session against that Exchange Online. So from there, I will create a new resource that will represent that room. So what I will do for now, I will disable name checking on that session. Just importing that session, create it on that previous value. And after that, next command I will run, new mailbox, is basically to represent that device. So this will be known as your Teams Room This is the alias, and in this case, this is a room. You will see enable mailbox account true. Basically, this will create an account that will represent this device inside Azure AD. So in here, definitely you can modify things. Yes, just forgot about modifying that name or my tenant. Sorry about that. Just gonna put this as M365X442. So that's my tenant. It should work. In this case, on those devices, I was saying you can modify things like as capacity, who should be able to use or schedule meetings using that resource, and also maybe there's an approver or a delegate that need to authorize those requests. After that, also, if someone, for example, sends a request to that resource, there's a delegate or will be automatically processed. So all those different things are part of that definition I added here with all those different settings in here. So for now, what I will do, I will actually modify that calendar processing. So if someone, for example, would like to use that resource or that room to host the meeting, in this case, I will actually use automate processing auto-accept. So basically just first arrive, first serve. So the first person that, for example, use that room in that particular date and time, basically can keep the room because they did it first. So that will do here. For now, definitely not adding extra management overhead to someone definitely to manage that availability of the room. So just gonna take a couple of seconds. And then actually what I will do, I will remove that session and will switch over to, again, that Azure AD, just to make sure always a good idea. Just let me, for now, actually remove that Exchange Online session. And I will run again that connect Azure AD. Because this created a user account inside Azure AD, I will just double check that that account that represents that resource is disabled inside Azure AD. And definitely it's not like a person will authenticate. So actually those user accounts that represent those resources need to be disabled inside Azure AD. So that I'll double check that. Just gonna again authenticate. In this case, I'm connecting back to Azure AD. As the administrator of the tenant. There you go. So next command, I will just double check. In this case, definitely I make sure that I change the name with the right information of the tenant. I will just double check. There you go. That account that represents that resource is disabled inside Azure AD. After that, let me just switch back to that Teams Admin Center. And in here, let's select that actually Admin Center. Let's go to Active Users. If I go to Active Users in the M365 Admin User, I will definitely see that resource is there. You will see that resource that represents, in this case, that room that I created into the previous steps. So we'll just select that Teams room. I will select, in this case, also licenses, just to make sure it has the right license enabled. So in this case, it's a good idea that it has the license activated, so that it will have a mailbox, and I can leverage all those different capabilities in Exchange Online. So that's the last step, and now actually I should be ready to start using that room to schedule meetings. So that's the last step of this demo. So with that, we end the content of today, module number 3. So this concludes part number 1. Let's recap all the content that you have seen today. So first, we started with an overview, what's Team, all the different capabilities, also in terms of integration with other tools like Power Platform. Module number 2, we discussed about all the different technologies and tools that you have available to follow your security governance strategies inside Microsoft Teams. And on module number 3, last one of the day, we covered more in detail how to plan that transition if you have an existing Skype for Business, and overall, if this is a brand new deployment, all the things that you must consider in terms of networking capabilities, just to make sure that you will offer a good end user experience. So thank you for your attendance, and so far we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the part 2 of this Microsoft 365 Virtual Training Day, Enable Virtual Work with Microsoft Teams.